Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Monday, January 4th, 1999, 2 a.m. 30-year-old prostitute Catherine Hall walks North Street, waiting for her next John. A car approaches. The driver seems charming, so Catherine gets in. They drive to a nearby field.
He demands oral sex from her, but then starts to assault her.
A zip tie is put around her neck.
Catherine fights back. She grabs the door, jumps out of the car, and makes a run for it.
But he manages to capture her again. After killing her, he takes off her clothing and he mutilates her.
A local hunter finds Hall's remains the following afternoon on Peugeot Road in southeast Baton Rouge.
There are severe post-mortem slash wounds and stab wounds. Detectives arrived at the conclusion that she was cut an additional 21 times, which shows a certain degree of rage and hatred toward the victim.
Investigators hope forensic evidence retrieved from Hall's body will lead them to the sadistic criminal.
There is DNA transfer. Underneath her fingernails, within her teeth, she has hair fibers.
But the DNA evidence doesn't match any profile in the database, so it's filed away. Catherine's killer remains a mystery to police.
They arrive at the conclusion that this is most probably not the suspect's first homicide and most likely will not be his last homicide.
Scotlandville, Louisiana, Friday, November 12, 1999. 36-year-old prostitute Joyce Williams walks the asphalt along Highway 19, just north of Baton Rouge. A John pulls over and picks her up. He seems friendly. The two sing along with the radio as they drive across the Mississippi River, finally pulling over in a remote area. Joyce gets out to go to the bathroom.
It's at this point that he attacks her and puts the zip tie around her neck.
Williams fights back, but her attacker kicks her feet out from under her, then tightens the zip tie until she stops breathing.
He's going to take her body and ultimately dispose of it later on a levee by the Mississippi River.
Bird hunters find Joyce Williams' dead body 2.5 months later. Officers are shocked by the degree to which her body has been dismembered. Her head, torso, and a severed leg had each been placed into separate garbage bags.
It's almost as if he's just putting her out with the rubbish.
Authorities offer a $1,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest in the case. Could the man who strangled and dismembered Joyce Williams be the same person who mutilated Catherine Hall? Because the bodies have been disposed of in different jurisdictions, cops treat them as unrelated murders. In the meantime, yet another sex worker has gone missing.
Lillian Robinson, in January of 2000, is a 52-year-old prostitute. She's going to become the next victim.
Lillian's killer had dumped her body in the Atchafalaya Basin, 35 miles west of Baton Rouge. But cops wouldn't find Robinson's remains until March, after two fishermen several miles downriver spot her body floating in the water. To investigators, it appears Robinson's killer abused her corpse.
He decides to engage in the practice of necrophilia, which is to have sex with dead people.
The murder of Lillian Robinson seems connected to the deaths of Catherine Hall and Joyce Williams. All three had been solicited, strangled to death, and violated post-mortem. But since the bodies are recovered in 3 separate jurisdictions, each murder is treated as an isolated crime. The cases grow icy cold, especially after a different killer starts preying on women in the same geographical location.
Derek Todd Lee was targeting women and killing them and disposing of them.
By May 2003, DNA evidence connected Lee to the horrific slayings of 8 women.
So when he was actually arrested, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that this was the serial killer that everyone was looking for. But it's a short time where he's in custody and the murders begin again, so it's very clear that there's more than one serial killer operating at this time in this area.
Zachary, Louisiana, Saturday, October 11th, 2003. 2 boys playing in the woods find a woman lying face down off a trail. She's dead. Authorities respond and are shocked by the state of the victim's body.
What they do find extremely disturbing is that there's obvious signs of incredible forceful trauma with a sharp object. So she has been mutilated repeatedly post-mortem.
The victim's hands have been severed and cannot be located, so cops assume the killer took them as a memento of the crime.
which is incredibly high risk in terms of taking these trophies back with him.
The body is identified as 45-year-old Johnny Mae Williams. The mother of 3 worked as a house cleaner, but occasionally turned tricks to support her drug addiction. At the crime scene, investigators find a piece of critical forensic evidence.
They come across a hair, and the hair fiber that they find, they send to the FBI lab. They're going to do a DNA profile sequencing on it. It's going to come back matching the hair which was found at a previous murder site.
Law enforcement now knows the same person who killed Williams was also responsible for the death of Catherine Hall. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Thursday, February 26, 2004, 3 a.m. 44-year-old Donna Bennett Johnston is standing on the corner of Geronimo and Prescott. The mother of 5 is drunk. Even though she'd been arrested for drug possession and solicitation before, Johnston isn't actively working the streets until a charming man pulls up and offers her a ride.
He had murder in mind. He was going out hunting, stalking, looking for women. And at this time, he has a camera, a saw and a knife, and he drives her to a remote location, which was a chemical plant, and he puts a zip tie around her neck.
Intoxicated, Donna can't put up much of a fight.
So when he's finished with Donna, he then drops the body in a ditch. So again, we just see signs that he's casually just dropping off the rubbish.
Between 1999 and 2004, 5 women are savagely murdered in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. 2 of the victims, Catherine Hall and Johnny Mae Williams, have been connected by DNA to the same perpetrator. Law enforcement now knows they're dealing with a serial killer. Friday, February 27, 2004, 7:40 a.m. 2 people driving on Ben-Hur Road spot 44-year-old Donna Bennett Johnston's nude body on a ravine embankment.
They look over, they think it's nothing more than a store mannequin until somebody realizes, no, this is a real human being.
CSI techs arrive an hour later and process the scene for evidence.
They're able to get hair fibers, which they positively match to the previous killings.
Johnston's killer is the same man who murdered Catherine Hall and Johnny Mae Williams. Within days, a multi-agency task force is formed to investigate the murder spree. They identify several key connections between the killings. All of the victims led high-risk lifestyles, had ligature marks around the neck, and had been stabbed multiple times after death. In addition, all of the victims had been solicited in North Baton Rouge and transported to remote locations where their bodies had been disposed of in similar positions. As neighboring jurisdictions send their cold case files to the task force, the homicides of Lillian Robinson and Joyce Williams are added to the list of cases fitting the profile. All detectives need now is a big break, which they get from Donna Johnston's crime scene.
They find tire marks and tracks very close to where Donna's body was found.
Tire tracks, much like fingerprints, are unique unto themselves. Detectives take the impressions, plaster casings of the tire tracks, and they're able to go to several dealers, and the dealers are able to narrow down that particular model and tread pattern of that particular tire and what vehicle it would have gone to and who it was sold to.
This particular tire track belongs to about 90 particular vehicles in that area, and they get the name Sean Vincent Gillis for the first time.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Wednesday, April 28, 2004. Police visit Sean Gillis at home and swab him for DNA.
They notify him that they're conducting an ongoing investigation concerning multiple homicides which have occurred in the area.
At this point, Sean Vincent Gillis says some interesting things. One, that he was out that night that Donna was murdered, but 2, and more significantly, that he had pulled over to the side of the road very close to where those tire tracks were and where the body was found, so he actually places himself at the scene.
He additionally volunteers the fact that he knew one of the victims.
According to Gillis, Johnny Mae Williams was a friend who sometimes cleaned his house. He even spent Thanksgiving with her family several years before.
They ask him to come down to the police station for further investigation, and he complies.
The 3 girls who are working on this cat.
There's John, yeah, there's Johnny.
Did you ever see that girl on North Street? She used to run them down North Street, and that's where she did all her business.
Mm-mm.
You don't recall her?
I don't recall her, no.
They ask him many, many questions, but they get very few answers, and they actually have to release him.
Cops put Gillis under round-the-clock surveillance while they wait for test results to come back from the DNA swab. What they observe is a man who looks more like an average Joe than a serial killer.
He goes home, he's calm and cool and collected in the sense that he then makes dinner for his partner Terry. At this stage, Sean Vincent Gillis may feel that the police don't really have much on him.
In April 2004, police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, are investigating the murders of Catherine Hall, Johnny Mae Williams, and Donna Bennett Johnson, 3 sex workers who are all connected by DNA to a single killer. Tire tracks found at the Johnston crime scene lead cops directly to Sean Vincent Gillis. Under questioning, Gillis reveals little, but detectives remain hopeful DNA analysis will prove the 41-year-old convenience store clerk is their man. Thursday, April 29, 2004, 1 a.m. Authorities prepare to take down Sean Gillis after DNA tests come back, connecting him to the murders of Catherine Hall, Johnny Williams, and Donna Johnston.
Baton Rouge police now are not going to take any chances, even though they have him under surveillance. They're going to use a SWAT team to go in with forced entry. They use what are called flashbangs, concussion grenades, and they arrest him.
Stay down!
Now that Gillis is in custody, police want to know exactly who he is.
Sean Vincent Gillis was born 24th of June, 1962 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So Sean's father, Norman, is an alcoholic and also has mental health issues. But much more than that, he's very abusive and violent to the young Sean and also to his mother.
When Sean is approximately 1 year of age, his father holds a gun not only to his head, but his mother's head as well.
Norman Gillis spends the next 16 years in and out of mental health facilities. So Sean is raised entirely by his mother and grandparents.
By the time he becomes a teenager, his personality, his entire life is going to take a very, very disturbing turn.
And with that, he starts smoking marijuana, he's peeping in people's windows.
Mostly a loner, Gillis graduates from high school in 1980, then starts working at a convenience store.
Sean does have a job, very temporarily, at 7-Eleven, but doesn't last very long. So he spends most of his time at his house, sequestered away from the world.
He's certainly spending a lot of time on his computer, looking at certainly pornographic sites, but more specifically sites where women are being abused, where they're being raped, and where they're also being dismembered.
Gillis tries to pursue a career in computers, but finds it difficult to hold down a steady job. He does find a steady girlfriend, Terry Lemoyne, who manages a local convenience store. The two move in together in 1995.
She obtains a job for Gillis at the same convenience store. He works day shift, she works night shift.
They rarely see each other. But one of the other frustrations for Terry is that they're not having sex at all and doesn't seem to be sexually aroused by her.
Sean starts taking these long drives. He's gone most of the night. Of course, she naturally assumes that he's having an affair.
One morning, Sean picks Terry up following her shift at the store. She notices a foul odor in the car, as well as bloodstains.
And his explanation is he hit an animal.
More than once, Sean invites Terry to view pornographic images depicting dead and naked women.
He actually shows her some of the websites that he's looking at, and on those websites are women being raped and violated and dismembered.
None of this means Sean Gillis is a killer, but once his DNA profile comes back, little doubt remains. Still, Terry Lemoyne doesn't believe her mild-mannered boyfriend could ever commit such heinous crimes.
She goes down to the station and demands time with Gillis to ask him and look him in the face and the eye whether he is responsible for killing these particular women.
Surprisingly enough, he confirms and says, yeah, that's exactly what I've been doing.
In late April 2004, 41-year-old Sean Vincent Gillis is arrested on suspicion of murder after DNA connects him to the gruesome killings of Catherine Hall, Donna Johnston, and Johnny Williams. Soon, Gillis makes a full confession to both Baton Rouge sheriffs and the FBI.
He lays it all out, all about how he committed murders and perpetrated these crimes, how he very much enjoyed playing these mental chess games, as he says, with the police, trying to outsmart them. When he was queried as to how many women he actually killed, he initially claimed 4 to 5, but later on finally settled at a number of approximately 8.
Gillis tells law enforcement in detail about the murders of Ann Bryan, Hardy Schmidt, and Marilyn Nevels, 3 women they never suspected he killed.
82-year-old Ann Bryan, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is Sean's first victim. March 20th, 1994, she is sleeping. She's in the nursing home, which coincidentally is directly across from the convenience store.
The convenience store where Gillis worked.
She leaves her door open so that her caregivers can come in and administer medicine without waking her up.
Sean Gillis enters her bedroom and he then tries to rape her. And because she starts to fight back, he then stabs her multiple times to silence her forever.
Gillis encountered 52-year-old Hardy Schmidt in May 1999 while she was out jogging.
He intentionally strikes her with a vehicle and is going to knock her body down into a ditch. He goes down, takes a zip tie, puts it around her neck, drags her back into the vehicle using the zip tie around her neck, takes her to an isolated location, rapes her repeatedly. Once he kills her, he's going to take her body and toss it into the car, and it's going to remain in the vehicle for several days.
Long enough for Gillis's girlfriend to notice the smell.
On October 30th, 2000, Marilyn Nevels is walking down a street, and unfortunately for her, Sean Gillis is there too, and he engages her in conversation, offers her money, so very similar to what we've seen with the other victims, and she gets in the car.
He takes her to a location, attempts to kill her. She fights back very violently, gets out, initially escapes. Unfortunately, he's able to catch up to her and beats her over the head and subsequently murders her. He takes her body, tosses it into the car, goes to a car wash,
where he hoses her down. Then he takes her back to his home address, where he showers with her. And now he realizes he's in a rush and he's got to go somewhere, probably to meet Terry. So he puts her in the car and then he just dumps her body in a degrading way, again, almost like just putting out the rubbish so that all can see her and find her.
As cops continue to unravel the disgusting details of his crimes, they're shocked by the depths of Gillis's depravity. He tells detectives that he masturbated with the severed hands of one of his victims, Johnny Mae Williams. He also admits to cannibalizing the bodies of Donna Johnston and Joyce Williams. In August 2007, Sean Gillis pleads guilty to the second-degree murder of Joyce Williams. He's sentenced to life in prison, but still must face the music for crimes he committed in East Baton Rouge. On July 31, 2008, Gillis is convicted of Donna Johnston's first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
The reason that he escaped the death penalty is due to the fact that the jury deadlocked on the death penalty phase.
In one final act of justice, Gillis receives a third life sentence for the murder of Marilyn Nevels. Eustace, Florida, Monday, November 25, 1996, 10:15 p.m. 17-year-old high school senior Jennifer Wendorf returns home from visiting her boyfriend.
She walks into the house and she sees her father, which she presumes to be asleep on the couch.
Jennifer heads straight for her bedroom. Mom and little sister Heather are nowhere in sight.
She attempts to call her boyfriend with the house phone, but realizes that the phone's dead, and she looks and sees that the line has been cut.
She thinks that it's probably something that Heather has done, acting out.
Jennifer goes into her sister's room and completes the call to her boyfriend. Then she heads to the kitchen to grab a snack.
She notices a small trail of blood going into the kitchen, and all of a sudden she looks, and there's her mother face down in a pool of blood. She has been savagely beaten. She runs to tell her father, and much to her shock, finds that her father has been even more savagely beaten.
Jennifer dials 911 in a panic.
My mother and my father have just been killed. I just walked in the door. I don't know what happened. They are dead.
Both your mother and your father? They are not breathing at all?
I don't know. I didn't check. I can't get that close. They're my parents. There is blood everywhere. Please, as fast as you can.
Are you there alone?
I have no idea. There could be someone in the house. I don't know where my sister is. She's gone. Should be here. She's only 15 years old, and she's gone.
Police and paramedics arrive, but Jennifer's parents, Richard and Naoma, are dead.
Both had sustained extremely excessive blunt force trauma wounds from a very heavy object.
Crime scene technicians find blood evidence everywhere, in several rooms, on the floors, walls, and furniture.
They find over 100 fingerprints, as well as 2 bloody footprints.
One is a combat boot, and the other one is a sneaker.
Cops also find cigarette butts, hair, and other trace evidence, as well as a pair of sneakers which were left on the front lawn. The home's 3 bedrooms appear to have been ransacked.
A necklace, knife, and a Discover card are all missing.
But to homicide detectives, this doesn't look anything like a robbery. This is something far more sadistic.
On Richard's upper chest, there are 9 burn marks which have been imprinted into the flesh, and they form a rough V. On Naomi's body as well, on her abdomen, on her arms, there are a number of additional scorch marks. So obviously both of the victims have been burned by some means.
Down in the garage, they also see 666 that's been put into the dust that's collected on the garage door.
But what does this all mean? As investigators continue to look for clues, they find a handwritten note in one of the bathrooms, which appears to have been left behind by Heather.
It says, "I'm fine, please don't try and find us."
Police have to consider the worst case scenario, which is that she was forced to write this and then she was kidnapped subsequent to the murder of her parents. But apparently the inference is that she ran away to look after a friend of hers.
Less than an hour into the homicide investigation, detectives interview Heather's friend, whose name is Janine LeClaire. LeClaire tells them she and Heather plan to skip town together, only she got caught earlier that evening before they could rendezvous.
Janine is in the woods waiting for Heather to come and pick her up. Her mother realizes that she's missing, and when she finds her, Janine actually tells her what the plan is and that she intends to run away with Heather.
The police pressed Janine, and she ultimately gives an official statement that Heather had run off with Rod Farrell.
Heather and Rod had attended Eustace High School together and become very close before Farrell dropped out and moved to Murray, Kentucky in December 1995.
They try and maintain their relationship through lots of phone calls, but they're racking up huge telephone bills, so her parents start telling her that she can't speak to him, which she finds incredibly difficult and feels that they're trying to control her.
Because Heather's apparently run away from home, investigators wonder if her troubled relationship with her parents has something to do with their murder.
As the investigators start to delve into the case, they suddenly realize that this all-American family is anything but. Apparently there's a lot of conflict, a lot of very violent fights and outbursts, tremendous sibling rivalry.
The Wendorf sisters seem to be headed in opposite directions.
Jennifer Wendorf, she's very popular in school, very outgoing, she's a cheerleader. Heather Wendorf is very gifted, but she goes through a stage where she stops eating, she starts cutting herself. Obviously, she's got some emotional issues here.
Just minutes after walking in on the bloodbath, Jennifer Wendorf tells detectives point blank she's sure her sister is somehow responsible for the death of their parents. Jennifer claims that, on more than one occasion, Heather asked her if she'd ever wished their parents dead or plotted to kill them. According to Jennifer, Heather also claimed to know a hitman, Rod Farrell, who allegedly went from state to state.
Detectives are trying to piece together what's happened, so they speak to a number of Heather's friends. The same name keeps coming up, Rod Farrell.
In a very negative and dark fashion, his name comes up, and he is continually linked to this vampire crossover, kill people, drink your blood type thing.
And there's also murmurings that he is the head of a vampire cult.
A vampire cult that Heather Wendorf pledges allegiance to. Less than 24 hours into the homicide investigation, police begin to suspect that Heather and Rod murdered her parents as part of a vampire ritual, took their SUV, then skipped town.
The police now place out an APB, which is an all-points bulletin, for the Wendorf's baby blue Ford Explorer.
Eustace, Florida, Wednesday, November 27, 1996. Law enforcement issues arrest warrants for Heather Wendorf, Rod Farrell, and 3 other teens that are believed to be traveling with them. Charity Kesey, Howard Scott Anderson, and Dana Cooper.
All of whom claim to be vampires.
In late November 1996, 5 teenagers, Rod Farrell, Heather Wendorf, Charity Kesey, Scott Anderson, and Dana Cooper, are on the run, facing arrest warrants for the brutal murders of common-law husband and wife, Richard Wendorf and Naoma Queen. The fugitives consider themselves to be a vampire family headed by 16-year-old Rod, who claims to be a 500-year-old immortal named Vasago.
16-year-old Charity Kesey is Farrell's current girlfriend. She believes that she's pregnant and she's desperate to try and keep hold of Farrell and to stop him womanizing. 16-year-old Scott Anderson has been good friends with Farrell since 2nd grade, and he effectively becomes Farrell's right-hand man.
He's been in and out of foster care, very disruptive lifestyle, upbringing, really no continuity.
19-year-old Dana Cooper is the oldest member of Farrell's cult. She hasn't got many friends, and she really wants a sense of belonging, and Farrell offers her this through the vampiric lifestyle and family.
All in the crew have vampire identities. Charity is Shay, Heather is Zoe, Scott is Nosferatu, Dana is Luther. A massive manhunt is already underway across the Southeast to find the blood-sucking teens, but law enforcement has no clue where they went. The fugitives had traveled through Florida, from Eustace to Tallahassee, then headed west to New Orleans.
Rod Farrell and his ignominious crew have great hopes of meeting other vampires. These guys are just going gangbusters. They are ripping the country apart.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Thursday, November 28, 1996. Charity Kesey calls her mother from a payphone.
They're broke. They have no food. They can't afford the gas. So Charity decides she's going to call her mother collect.
And unbeknownst to the vampire cult, her mother works with the sheriff, so she starts asking questions about where they are. And given that they have no money, she then offers to pay for a hotel and tells them all to go there.
Rod and the others pull into the hotel parking lot around 9 p.m.
Police come in, they surround the Howard Johnsons, and they take all of our aspiring vampires into custody.
Baton Rouge Police Headquarters, Friday, November 29, 1996, 12 a.m. Law enforcement is in the thick of interrogating Rod Farrell.
He shows absolutely no emotion. He does admit to the fact that he was the one who murdered the Wendorfs, both the father and the mother.
Boom, right across the temple of the head. So I just beat him until he died.
He doesn't implicate anybody else, which is strikingly unusual.
Rod had agreed to talk to cops only because they promised him he could see Charity one last time.
Don't worry, you get to go home. He said right now, basically this close to trying me as an adult, which means straight death penalty. Either way, I'm so the best thing I can hope for is getting only 7 to 8 years. I love you. If I find out you've had anyone while I've been gone, I will beat the
As authorities question the cult members, a picture emerges of a chain of events that ended in cold-blooded murder. Saturday, November 23rd, 11:30 p.m. Rod Farrell, Dana Cooper, and Scott Anderson drive Anderson's 1987 Buick Skylark 800 miles from Murray, Kentucky to Eustace, Florida.
Deep down, he was saying he wanted to kill something or somebody. And then he saw, and he said, well, maybe it's Zoe's parents.
Sunday, November 24th, 11:45 p.m. Rod attempts to recruit Janine LeClaire.
He's going to convince her now to come with him, to join the crew. He tells them they're on a very tight time frame.
Monday, November 25th, 2 p.m. Heather Wendorf meets Rod at Greenwood Cemetery.
There's a little bloodletting and drink each other's blood.
Rod. He crossed me over.
8:30 p.m. Heather meets Rod, Charity, Scott, and Dana at the end of her street. Dana and Charity drive Heather to her boyfriend's house so she can say goodbye. Rod and Scott stay behind and head for the Wendorfs.
Me and Shay did try to convince them not to do it, but...
Not to do what?
Not to kill her parents. They was like, well, there's no other way. It was like talking to a brick wall.
He just wanted to kill something.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Friday, November 29th, 1996. After 4 days on the run following the horrific double homicide of Richard Wendorf and Naoma Queen, 16-year-old Rod Farrell and his crew of teenage self-professed vampires are being interrogated at police headquarters. Once Rod confesses to being the killer, the others fill in the details on how the murders went down.
Farrell and Anderson, around 9 to 10 o'clock at night, break into the Wendorf's house, going in through an unlocked garage. They then start looking for a weapon. They actually find a crowbar.
Richard Wendorf is asleep on the couch.
Before Richard can wake up, Rod beats him mercilessly. He kills him and lifts up his shirt and uses a lit cigarette to burn the V pattern into his chest.
Sometime later, Naoma walks into the kitchen and sees the boys there.
She goes, "What do you want?" But Ron didn't answer. He just hit her. She clawed him in the face and spilled coffee on him. Then he began to stab her in the top of the head with the bottom of the crowbar. I was froze. There was nothing I could do.
Detectives grill Heather Wendorf. She denies that she ever wanted Rod to kill her parents.
I remember telling him flat out, don't even go near my parents.
Why would you tell him not even to go near your parents?
Because he asked me not too long ago if I wanted my parents dead or alive, and I said straight out I wanted them alive. I told him so many times to leave him alone. I never told him to do anything to him.
After nearly 20 hours of intense police questioning, Rod Farrell and 4 members of his vampire cult are transported to lockup.
Any comment? Sure, you got something to say?
Yeah, I love America.
Within days, the teens are extradited from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, back to Lake County, Florida, to face murder charges.
As they're being extradited, one of the things that Rod does is he presses his face up against the glass, sticks his tongue out, and blows all the media a kiss.
Tavares, Florida, Tuesday, December 17th, 1996. Rod Farrell is indicted on 2 counts of armed robbery and 2 counts of first-degree murder. Even though cops have him on tape confessing to the crimes, Farrell pleads not guilty. The following day, he calls a local newspaper to set the record straight.
He tells the reporter that it was a rival vampire crew that actually committed the murders.
Later, another story is offered up by Farrell, but this time he's saying it was actually Scott Anderson who took his boots and went into the Wendorf's house and committed both murders.
But prosecutors have DNA evidence taken from underneath Naoma Queen's fingernails, which directly connects Rod to the crimes. As they build their case against him, law enforcement probes Farrell's background.
Farrell's childhood is very transient and traumatic. He has a father who has abandoned him and who is absent. Farrell's mother tries to do the best job that she possibly can by being an exotic dancer. She abdicates much of the responsibility for parenting him to her parents.
At 5, Rod starts drawing pictures that depict abuse.
His mother questions him about this, and he says that on a fishing trip with relatives, he was forced to perform sex acts with men.
Later on, Farrell claims it was a black mass ritual where he saw people being sacrificed and where he was also raped.
Farrell's true descent into darkness takes place after he moves to Murray, Kentucky in December 1995. There, at Callaway High School, 15-year-old Rod meets 17-year-old Stephen Murphy, who identifies himself as the vampire Jaden.
At one point, Murphy and Farrell visit the local cemetery and they exchange blood in a blood ritual. Stephen Murphy becomes his father or sire and plays a key role in terms of mentoring Farrell into the vampire way of life. His behavior dramatically changes and he is now wearing very dark clothes and he's just spiraling out of control.
Rod begins using cocaine and other hard drugs as he falls deeper into vampirism with Stephen Murphy.
Murphy and Farrell have the vampire cult that bonds them, but for Farrell this isn't enough. He actually wants to be the top dog, and they end up fighting. And they have a significant fight where Murphy overpowers him.
Rod decides that he has to take his vampirism to a whole new level, so he wants to break away from Stephen's vampire cult to form a cult of his own.
Rod and his new family spend their evenings at the Vampire Hotel, a dilapidated house on a hill overlooking town.
Rod starts to disengage with schoolwork. He then makes a threat to kill one of his teachers and cut his throat, and it's at this point that Rod Ferrell is expelled from school and isolated further.
In 1996, Rod's mother files a writ with the courts basically saying that Rod's beyond her parental control.
Tavares, Florida, Thursday, February 5th, 1998. The state of Florida is finally ready to present its case against Roderick Justin Ferrell. But Rod enters the courtroom and shocks everyone by reversing his earlier not guilty plea.
He pleads guilty to armed robbery, armed burglary, and 2 counts of first-degree murder.
Sentencing begins 1 week later.
On February 23rd, the jury comes back, not only finds him guilty, but also that he is in fact eligible for the death penalty.
For the murder of Richard Wendorf, you are hereby sentenced to death.
This isn't somebody who's criminally sophisticated in any way. This is somebody who feels very much that he is damaged and therefore he would damage others. He chooses the Wendorfs purely on the basis that Heather is complaining about how they are trying to control her and interrupting the relationship that he has with them.
Despite the fact she belonged to Rod Ferrell's vampire family, ran away with them, and allegedly told sister Jennifer that she wanted their parents dead, Heather Wendorf never goes to trial. In separate trials, the other cult members receive varying sentences for their roles in the murders.
Scott Anderson pleads guilty to first-degree murder. He receives a life without possibility of parole sentence. Charity Kesey is sentenced to 10.5 years in prison on 2 counts of third-degree murder. Dana Cooper was found guilty of 2 counts of third-degree murder. She was given 17 years due to the fact that at the age of 19, she's technically an adult, not a juvenile like the others.
In November 2000, the Florida Supreme Court reduces Rod Ferrell's sentence to life in prison. San Luis Obispo, California, Thursday, November 12, 1998, 10:30 p.m. 20-year-old Rachel Newhouse, a junior nutrition major at Cal Poly University, gets ready for a night on the town.
Rachel Newhouse, very bright, cheery disposition, extremely popular, and a quintessential all-American girl.
11 p.m. Rachel and her roommate Andrea arrive at Tortilla Flats, a Mexican restaurant and bar popular with locals and college students.
Approximately an hour after Rachel's already been on the bar side, she and her friend apparently were seen outside the women's restroom. They get in an argument. Rachel just becomes very upset, and then she leaves by herself without her friend.
Rachel begins the 2-mile walk back home just after midnight. The streets are dark and deserted.
At some point, she had to make a decision to cross a bridge or follow down the street she was on.
She elects to take the bridge route. There's a man who's been drinking. He's had approximately 7 shots of Jack Daniels. He's driving in a truck. He sees her walking across the bridge.
The man puts on a skeleton mask, exits his truck, and approaches Rachel on the bridge.
She tries to walk past him, but he won't allow her to. He ends up beating her in the face, knocking her unconscious, and then dragging her down to his truck.
He secures her hands behind her back, ties them, and then tosses her body in behind the cab.
He then drives her to a remote area where he stops the truck and ties her legs up. Then he takes her to a dilapidated cabin in the middle of nowhere, throws her over his shoulder, and drags her into the house. At this point, she regained consciousness.
Inside the abandoned A-frame cabin, the nightmare is just beginning.
The man puts Rachel on the floor and unties her legs. He then proceeds to rape her. And then he stuffs her underwear back in her mouth and ties a rope around it and hog-ties her and leaves the cabin. When he came back, Rachel was dead.
The following day, after Rachel fails to show up for work at a local brewery, her roommates call the police.
The San Luis Obispo Police Department doesn't have much to go on other than a blood stain on the bridge.
A blood swab ultimately will be taken from that bridge, and it has a positive match back to Rachel.
There's no eyewitnesses, there's no body, so the investigation pretty much stalls.
Law enforcement establishes a reward to generate new leads.
On November 19, 1998, the St. Louis Obispo Police Department calls in the FBI for assistance in the case.
The stakes are high. Rachel Newhouse isn't the first co-ed to disappear from San Luis Obispo. The town is still reeling from the vanishing of 19-year-old Kristen Smart, another Cal Poly student who's been missing since May 1996.
On May 25th, 1996, Kristen goes to a party to kick off the Memorial Day weekend in her freshman year of college. She's trying to get her friends to go with her, but they didn't want to go, so she was on her own.
According to witnesses, Smart enjoys the party, then leaves sometime around 2 in the morning.
One of the other partygoers notices that she's passed out on the lawn adjacent to the party.
The young man who discovers Kristen lying in the grass enlists the help of a female student.
They realize she's way too intoxicated to go home, back to campus on her own, so they actually walk her back towards campus. Another student, Paul Flores, who was known by the nickname Chester the Molester, actually shows up out of nowhere and convinces these other 2 students that they should let him walk her back to her dorm alone.
They relinquish her to him, and it's the last time she'll ever be seen.
5 days later, on May 30th, police question Paul Flores. He tells detectives he knows nothing about Kristen's disappearance. Yet a month later, when Cal Poly's campus is searched with cadaver dogs, the dogs alert on Flores' dorm room and his mattress inside. Still, authorities don't charge the 19-year-old student with any crime. 18 months later, attorneys for the Smart family depose Paul Flores. He refuses to answer any questions.
Kristen Smart's family and the community in general felt that there were plenty of clues that led to Flores, but San Luis Obispo Police Department didn't move the case forward at all.
Can you provide me with the names of persons who were present at the party in May of 1996, the party that immediately preceded the disappearance of Kristen Smart?
On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Now, in November 1998, people are mentioning Flores' name again, wondering if he's responsible for the disappearance of Rachel Newhouse.
Because of the proximity of the Kristen Smart disappearance, the townspeople really felt that Mr. Flores may have been involved.
But early on in their investigation, detectives clear Paul Flores of any involvement in the Newhouse missing persons case. San Luis Obispo, California, Wednesday, March 11th, 1999, 1 a.m. 20-year-old Cuesta College undergrad Andrea Crawford is studying in her bedroom.
She loves animals, and she's the person that everybody seems to really enjoy being in the company of.
The interior design major has no idea that outside, a predator lurks, his identity distorted by the pantyhose stretched over his face.
This individual has cased her place approximately 4 to 5 times. He very specifically has targeted her.
The masked man waits for Andrea to fall asleep.
He tries the front door, the back door, all the first floor windows, and they're all locked. But then he finds a bathroom window, a very small one, open. He forces out the screen and forces himself through that window.
Crawford's cat, Riley, lets out a sound like a human scream. Andrea wakes up and goes to inspect the commotion.
Andrea opens the door shortly thereafter and is confronted by the masked man.
She tries to put up a fight. He punches her repeatedly until she's finally rendered unconscious.
He hog-ties her and puts duct tape over her mouth. He takes 2 pillowcases from her bedroom. One he puts over her head, and the other he fills with CDs, VHS tapes, and a VCR.
As he's exiting location with her body and with this other pillowcase, he notices that there's a small little keychain. It has on it a little billiard 8-ball.
The intruder takes the 8-ball keychain as a trophy.
He takes her body, throws it back of the seat in the cab, and he drives her to a remote location. He will rape and sodomize her repeatedly over the next several hours.
At one point, Andrea attempts to escape and actually sees his face. That's when he tells her he's going to have to kill her. At that point, he strangles her to death with a rope.
The following day, Andrea's mother, Gail, can't get a hold of her, so she calls the San Luis Obispo PD. Police dispatch an officer to search Crawford's duplex. Her mother tags along. They find Andrea's purse inside her car, which remains in the driveway. Inside her unit, they see her pager. In May 1996, 19-year-old college freshman Kristen Smart walks home from a party in San Luis Obispo, California. and is never seen again. By the spring of 1999, the SLO Police Department is not only dealing with her missing persons case, which remains unsolved, they now have two new cases. 20-year-old students Rachel Newhouse and Andrea Crawford, who mysteriously vanished.
March 15, 1999, San Luis Obispo PD announces that they don't feel that these two missing co-ed cases are related.
But Rachel Newhouse's uncle, Peter Morial, who happens to be a DA in Riverside, California, goes public stressing the similarities between Andrea Crawford and Rachel Newhouse. Parole officer David Zaragoza has the exact same hunch and believes the serial offender could be his 33-year-old parolee, Rex Allen Krebs.
On May 24, 1987, Shelley Crosby was out of the restaurant, and she walked past Krebs, who was trying to get her attention. She basically ignored him, and that really pissed him off. He then followed her home in his Volkswagen.
The 21-year-old divorced mother returns to an empty house. The kids are at the sitters, and her roommate won't be back till 6 a.m. Krebs waits in his car for Shelley to go to bed.
About 45 minutes later, she's awoken by Krebs' hand across her mouth. Krebs ties her up with a nylon rope and then rapes her repeatedly.
He suddenly hears the muffler of her roommate's car coming into the location. He leans over next to her after she's secured and says, "Have a nice day," and then he flees the location.
3 weeks later, Krebs strikes again.
June 15, 1987, Anishka Constantine is sleeping in her Pismo Beach home. Her 7-year-old daughter is sleeping next to her.
She's awoken by a crash and finds herself face to face with Krebs, who places a screwdriver point right at the edge of her eye. Her daughter screams.
The 31-year-old single mother offers Krebs money and jewelry, whatever he wants.
But Krebs says, "I want you." Anishka tells her daughter to get underneath the bed. She finds a phone underneath there. She attempts to call 911. Unfortunately, the phone is dead.
Krebs is determined, but so is Constantine.
When he's unzipping his pants, Anishka notices Krebs has a knife at his waist. She tells him maybe we should go to another room.
As they're walking down the hallway, she manages to knock the knife out of his belt onto the floor. They struggle over it. She does attempt to stab him, but unfortunately his belt buckle deflects it.
Enraged, Krebs repeatedly bashes Constantine's head into the wall.
Somehow, despite her injuries, she's able to flee the location.
She runs outside and screams for the neighbors. Krebs takes off and the neighbors give chase, but he jumps over a 6-foot wall and they're unable to capture him.
But Krebs has been careless.
Police find a brown corduroy snap brim hat, a buck knife, and the sheath.
Before long, cops track down Rex.
Both Anishka and her daughter positively identify Krebs out of a photo lineup.
Krebs eventually confesses to the rape of Shelley Crosby and the attempted rape of Anishka Constantine.
Krebs agrees to a plea bargain and is sentenced to 20 years in prison. Unfortunately, he's paroled after serving only 10 years.
In September 1997, the California Department of Prisons unleashes convicted rapist Rex Allen Krebs on the public just 10 years into a 20-year sentence because of model behavior and overcrowding.
Krebs is a diagnosed sexual sadist who, after he's released, settles into the quiet little town of San Luis Obispo shortly after the disappearance of Kristen Smart.
Even though Krebs couldn't possibly be Kristen Smart's abductor, his parole officer David Zaragoza has a gut feeling Rex is responsible for the disappearances of Rachel Newhouse and Andrea Crawford. San Luis Obispo County, California, Wednesday, March 17, 1999, 12 p.m. P.O. Zaragoza visits Krebs at his home on Davis Canyon Road.
Zaragoza notices that Krebs is in pain. He's wearing a weightlifter's belt. He says that he injured himself by falling on a pile of wood. Zaragoza's not buying it.
Zaragoza, much to his credit, is going to push the investigation. He goes to the San Luis Obispo detectives and says, "Look, I've got a pretty good, feeling here about Krebs."
SLOPD passes along the info on Krebs to the Justice Department's Sexual Predator Unit, which is headed by Karen Sandusky.
Sandusky decides to give Krebs a call at his workplace. When she calls him, he actually says, "I'm surprised you didn't call me after the first girl went missing."
Sandusky, Zaragoza, and FBI agent are going to meet Krebs at his house that night.
During the search, they don't find anything related to the missing girls, but they find BBs.
Krebs admits to keeping a BB gun at the lumberyard where he works. Possession of any firearm, real or simulated, is a parole violation.
The next morning, on March 20th, law enforcement stakes out Krebs' job, and they find the BB gun, so they arrest him.
Authorities search Krebs' residence for the second time in 2 days.
While there, they find the property that was stolen from Andrea's house, CDs and VHS tapes, and they also find the 8-ball keychain. Now they begin a full-on investigation of Rex Allen Krebs.
San Luis Obispo Police Headquarters, Thursday, April 22nd, 1999. Detectives question Rex Krebs.
He waives his constitutional rights and he agrees to speak with them.
We're dealing with Rachel Newhouse and Andrea Crawford, right? Okay, are you responsible for the disappearance of both girls? Are we going to find either girl alive?
First, Krebs sheepishly details how he killed Rachel Newhouse, which he claims was an accident.
So, she's left there, she's alive, but she's gagged, so she can't scream. Okay. And then what'd you do?
I went back down about 10 or 15 minutes.
So you just drove up to the house, had a shot of whiskey, thought about it, and drove back down. Then what happened?
When I went in, she was dead.
What killed her?
The rope around her neck.
Did you intend to kill her, Rex?
No.
Next, Rex tells detectives exactly what he did to Andrea Crawford.
I go to sleep on the couch again.
Okay.
I hear a noise, I wake up. She's coming out of the bedroom, got her blindfold off.
She's still tied behind the rack, her hands. What do you do?
Strangle her.
Okay. How did you strangle her?
Piece of rope.
And what happened?
She died.
I'm sorry, Rex, I couldn't hear you.
She died, Larry. Put her on the floor of the bedroom so I wouldn't have to look at what I'd done.
Rex Krebs is the monster everyone's been looking for. In April 1999, 33-year-old convicted rapist Rex Krebs confesses to abducting and killing 20-year-old college students Rachel Newhouse and Andrea Crawford. Then, he leads San Luis Obispo police detectives to where he disposed of their bodies. As they build their case against Krebs, law enforcement seeks to answer the question of motive. Why does Krebs repeat this cycle of violence against women? The answer lies in his trauma-filled childhood.
There are a lot of red flags in Krebs' early life. Violence surrounded him since infancy. His father not only beat his mother, but when she left him, she ended up with another man who also beat him and his mother.
Rex's father, Alan Krebs, doesn't just beat his wife unconscious. He often viciously rapes her within earshot of the children. Rex's stepfather rapes his sisters and regularly humiliates him. In 1979, 13-year-old Rex begins to lash out.
Gets a ski mask and a butcher knife and he breaks into the trailer of one of his classmates.
When the mother and daughter came home, they found him masturbating in a closet.
They surprise him, he escapes the location, he's subsequently arrested.
At age 15, Krebs' father decides to sign him into a state psychiatric hospital.
Rex improves within the confines of the hospital. After a month of intensive therapy, he's transferred to a residential treatment center.
He's moved to the Northern Idaho Children's Home, where he also receives treatment and counseling. At first, he doesn't do so well, but later he starts to excel.
By March 1983, Rex has made great strides. The staff believes he's been rehabilitated. But 4 years later, Krebs is a convicted rapist. 14 years after that, he's on trial for murder. Monterey, California, Monday, March 19, 2001. The Rex Allen Krebs double murder trial gets underway. Armed with Krebs' confession, Rachel Newhouse's DNA recovered from blood found in his truck, and Andrea Crawford's 8-ball keychain, prosecutors push for the death penalty. Krebs never takes the stand in his own defense. His legal team argues that his attitude towards women, combined with his alcoholism, caused Rex's brutal behavior.
He hates women very vehemently, very strongly, and he especially hates his mother for giving him over to the charge of his father, who was tremendously abusive.
When he drank, he went from good Rex to bad Rex.
The jury deliberates for 4 days, coming back with a return of guilty on all 11 counts.
On April 17, 2001, the sentencing phase begins, and the defense is trying to save Krebs from the death penalty.
What they're trying to do is portray him as a person that was terribly abused as a child, and that caused him to become a very violent and sadistic individual as an adult.
The jury isn't sympathetic and sentences Rex Allen Krebs to death on May 11, 2001.
This is a perfect example of a sexual sadist. One who, yes, had a rough childhood, but he actually excelled when he was institutionalized. Yet, almost as soon as he got out, he immediately reverted back to his violent, sexual, predatory behavior.
Pretoria, South Africa, Wednesday, February 13, 2013, 8:04 a.m. 29-year-old model Riva Steenkamp starts her morning with a healthy shake and a few tweets. She seems excited that Valentine's Day is less than 24 hours away.
Riva Steenkamp was voted one of the sexiest women in the world. She was much more than that. She studied law and was one of their top graduates. So she wasn't just a pretty face, but she did have a relatively high media profile.
Riva plans to spend the evening with a celebrity she's been dating who lives in an exclusive gated community. Surveillance cameras show Steenkamp arriving at the security gate around 6 p.m. Her boyfriend arrives 10 minutes later. They spend the rest of the night at home. Silverwoods Country Estate, Thursday, February 14th, 2 a.m. Neighbors are startled awake by loud noises coming from Riva's boyfriend's house.
Very early in the morning, 4 shots ring out, a woman screaming.
3:18 a.m. In a panic, Riva's boyfriend calls his neighbor, who's the manager of the community. The neighbor and his daughter rush over to the house. As they push open the door, Riva's boyfriend is carrying her body down the stairs, covered in blood. 3:59 a.m. Cops arrive at the residence. They immediately recognize the man covered in blood. It's Oscar Pistorius, the double amputee sprinter who's one of the most beloved sports figures in South Africa. EMS tries to save Steenkamp, but it's too late. She's pronounced dead on the scene. Detectives question Pistorius about what happened that night in his villa.
He admits that he's the shooter, and he then offers up an explanation saying that it's because he thought there was an intruder in the bathroom. And his account is that he hears a noise and he gets up to investigate, and he's concerned because the bathroom window is open and there's some ladders going up to the bathroom window.
Pistorius claims that he grabbed his gun from under the bed and made his way to the bathroom.
He says that it's a split-second decision, and he shouts for the intruder to come out, and he shoots 4 times through the door. When he starts shooting, he has no idea that Riva was in the bathroom, and it's only later that he checks the bed and realizes that she's in there, and he uses a cricket bat to bash down the door.
At 4:15 a.m., Detective Hilton Botha, a 24-year veteran of the South African Police Service, arrives on the scene and takes the lead.
Detective Botha does, in fact, have a history with Oscar Pistorius because he was the one that worked on the case 4 years prior where Oscar Pistorius was accused of assault.
Allegedly, the assault on the female actually was following an argument at a party that Pistorius was holding. He slams the door in her face and it causes quite severe injuries. And Botha arrests Oscar for this particular assault.
The assault charges are eventually dropped. Now, given their history, Detective Botha suspects there's more to the story than Pistorius is letting on.
Detective Botha looks at Oscar. He's in disarray. He's crying. The one unusual thing that the detective notices is that his hands are clean, so when he queries Oscar on this one point of fact, he says, "Yes, I wash my hands."
The detective is perplexed that Pistorius took the time to clean up, but didn't take the time to consider his surroundings before firing his gun.
That's one of the first questions that Detective Botha has for Oscar. Well, if you think there's an intruder, why didn't you check for Riva? Why didn't you check on her well-being? What's her location so you can protect her?
Officers are also skeptical about why the bathroom door was locked.
It doesn't make any sense for an intruder to lock themselves in the bathroom.
To investigators, it makes more sense that Riva deliberately locked herself in the bathroom.
Inside, the police find 2 mobile phones, one belonging to Riva. So it's very clear that she actually took a mobile phone into the bathroom with her, and obviously that the door was locked. The fact she's locked the door and she's taken in a mobile phone with her indicates that she had an intention to be away from Oscar and maybe send some messages or make a phone call. And the fact that she's dressed to some degree indicates this is somebody who's actually trying to get away from her boyfriend.
Detective Botha's biggest contention with Pistorius's explanation is the issue of whether or not Oscar was wearing his prosthetic limbs when he shot Riva.
Oscar claims that he did not wear the prosthetic limbs.
Detective Hilton Botha, having looked at the bullets within the door, came to the conclusion that Oscar Pistorius was wearing his prosthetics when he shot Riva through the bathroom door.
And if he had them on and was able to discharge shots, that would have meant that it was either premeditation or he's sleeping with the prosthetic limbs on, which is highly unusual and somewhat improbable. And the problem is, well, if you have time to retrieve a pistol from underneath the bed, and you have time to work your way across without the prosthetic device, how did you not realize that your girlfriend was not in bed with you?
Boschkop Police Station, Pretoria, South Africa, Friday, February 15, 2013, 2:55 a.m. South African police place Oscar Pistorius under arrest and charge him with murder. Pistorius spends a week in jail before being released on a R1 million bond, which was approximately $112,000 at the time. He pleads not guilty.
He has to surrender all weapons and his passport.
In a bizarre twist, by the end of February, South African authorities remove lead detective Hilton Botha from the case. Botha faces 7 counts of attempted murder for an incident in 2011 where he allegedly opened fire on a van full of people.
A previous investigation was being reopened into him. He actually resigns from the police.
Botha's replacement, Lieutenant General Vunesh Kumar Munu, and his team start from scratch, investigating Pistorius's timeline of events on the night of the shooting.
Oscar initially claimed that both he and Riva had a perfectly normal night together, talking, watching TV.
According to Oscar, he and Riva ate dinner around 7 o'clock, then got into bed around 10 p.m. Steenkamp's autopsy tells a different story.
The forensic pathologist was able to arrive at the conclusion that no, in fact, that she had eaten approximately at 0100 hours in the morning.
Eyewitness accounts from neighbors also clash with Oscar's statements.
One of Oscar's neighbors claims that she heard a female arguing very, very loudly at 2 in the morning.
The argument allegedly continues for nearly an hour.
And then screams are heard, and it was a blood-curdling, terrified scream.
What could possibly cause Oscar and Riva to argue so loudly that neighbors could overhear them?
One of the things that came to light during the investigation was that Riva, 2 days prior to her demise, had coffee with a former boyfriend. And during that time when she had coffee with a boyfriend, her phone rang twice. It was a call from Oscar, which Riva promptly ignored.
Was Pistorius jealous? He and Riva had only been together a little more than 3 months.
By all accounts, everybody agrees it was a very intense relationship, a whirlwind relationship, and they're pretty much on the public platform.
Oscar's a very, very sexy boy.
They're both very taken with each other. Some would probably say Oscar was very infatuated and obsessive and all-consuming.
Investigators analyze hundreds of text messages between Riva and Oscar. 90% of them appear to be normal, but a few indicate tension and jealousy. On January 27, 2013, Riva texted, "Every 5 seconds I hear how you dated another chick. You really have dated a lot of people, yet you get upset if I mention one funny story with a long-term boyfriend. I do everything to make you happy and to not say anything to rock the boat with you. I have been upset by you for 2 days now. I'm scared of you sometimes and how you snap at me and of how you will react to me."
Now this gives a very clear insight that she's fearful of him.
Riva's mother said that her daughter and Oscar had a lot of very violent verbal altercations. He was very controlling, told her what to say, what to wear, where to go, how to act.
Less than a week before she was shot to death, Riva texted Oscar the following: "I am trying my best to make you happy, and I feel as though you sometimes never are, no matter the effort I put in." I can't be attacked by outsiders for dating you and be attacked by you, the one person I deserve protection from. Cops begin to develop the theory that Oscar intentionally shot and killed Riva in a fit of jealous rage. Pistorius had a very recent track record of violent outbursts and an affinity for guns.
And in fact, that very same gun that he used to shoot Riva was used in another incident where he became angered by a police officer stopping him, and as he drives off, he discharges the firearm through the sunroof.
That particular traffic stop took place in September 2012. Then, in January 2013, Pistorius was involved in yet another gun-related incident.
He allegedly discharges the firearm at a restaurant where a friend hands him a gun and he, under the table, discharges it accidentally.
In February 2013, 26-year-old South African Olympic hero Oscar Pistorius is charged with the first-degree murder of his girlfriend, model Riva Steenkamp. Law enforcement will spend the next 13 months building its case against Pistorius. Still, most South Africans find it hard to believe their native son, who's defied the odds since birth, is capable of doing any wrong.
Oscar Pistorius is born without fibula, so the small calf bones are missing in his legs, which results in double amputation.
He overcame a lot of adversity by learning how to work with prosthetic devices. Oscar feels somewhat invincible due to the fact that he's got these artificial limbs, so pretty much becomes an adrenaline junkie.
Oscar's mother, Sheila, is one of his biggest supporters, but she dies of a brain hemorrhage when he's just 15. Her death has a profound impact.
From there on out, he throws himself into sports, along with his brother.
Oscar shows promise as a runner. By 2004, he wins a spot on the South African Paralympic team. Then, Pistorius changes the sport by introducing a new style of prosthesis.
Oscar gets a flex-foot cheetah made for him. When he reveals this new prosthetic to people, he looks like half man, half machine.
Oscar's new bionic legs take him to the next level, earning him the nickname the Blade Runner.
In the Paralympics in 2004, Oscar wins a gold medal. But it's not only that, it's all the other running events that he becomes involved in. He just keeps winning and winning.
In 2012, Oscar becomes the first double amputee to compete in the Olympics. He doesn't medal, but becomes a media sensation, securing millions in endorsements.
And it's when he then starts to get the celebrity status that the entitled aspects to him start to show out, and we see this Jekyll and Hyde type character.
By 2014, the Blade Runner's on trial for murder.
You have all the mixings here for an international sensational trial. You got the beautiful model, you got the successful athlete, you got everything you could possibly hope for in a Hollywood blockbuster film.
Pretoria High Court, Monday, March 3rd, 2014. The Oscar Pistorius trial gets underway. With the world watching, prosecutors must prove that South Africa's golden boy is capable of killing girlfriend Riva Steenkamp in cold blood. Prosecutors argue that Oscar shot Riva after the two of them got into a heated argument.
One of the first witnesses is a female resident adjacent to the villa, and she states that just prior to the shooting, she hears intense arguing, male and female voice, that she can sense fear, trepidation in the female voice, and then she hears the shots.
The other neighbour gave a very similar testimony, that he had heard shots that were fired and heard a woman screaming.
Prosecutors allege that some of the screams came from Riva after she'd been shot. They introduce evidence to show that she feared for her life and suffered prior to dying.
The thing that the forensic pathologists come up with here is that Riva was probably in a coward position, arms crossed, in other words, in a very defensive, frightened position.
Oscar's team mounts an aggressive defense, taking direct aim at how poorly the South African Police Service handled the investigation.
There's a number of police blunders at the scene in terms of preservation of evidence and the investigation, and one of the things that presented a real challenge was that the door to the bathroom was taken off its hinges, and officers had actually walked across it and over it, so it wasn't preserved or wrapped in the right way when it went for forensic examination.
Another mistake that was made was that the murder weapon itself was handled absent the use of any type of gloves by the officers who were recovering it.
Pretoria, South Africa. Monday, April 7th, 2014. 1 month into his murder trial for the shooting death of girlfriend Riva Steenkamp, Oscar Pistorius takes the witness stand for the first time.
Oscar's defense basically is referred to sometimes the pity defense, that he's overcome all these hardships, but it's still been a very hard life.
I think the religion's maybe what it definitely is. God's the thing that's got me through this last year. I mean, there have been times that I've just been struggling a lot.
Riva is the victim of a murder, but everything now is about how upset Oscar is and how he's not sleeping, he's on medication, and how it's affected him, and going right back to his childhood, of the impact of his mother dying.
As the trial inches forward, Oscar appears to be breaking down.
After you fired the first shot, did she scream?
No, my lady.
Are you sure?
Yes, my lady.
Would you have heard her?
I don't think I would have heard it. There was a gunshot that went off, my lady. My ears were ringing.
He's crying and vomiting and behaving in such a dramatic way, the judge becomes concerned about his own mental health.
On May 20th, they suspend the trial, so they're going to have him undergo a psychological testing evaluation to find out whether or not he does, in fact, suffer from legitimate psychological issues, which would mitigate his responsibility or culpability in this crime.
A month later, psychiatrists determine Oscar does not suffer from any mental illness, and the trial resumes.
The defense, now they've got to shift tactics.
The defense's new strategy exploits Oscar's handicap to explain why he opened fire on the locked bathroom cubicle that fateful night.
The defense decided to call the surgeon who amputated Oscar's legs.
His line of defense was that Oscar, due to the fact that he didn't have the prosthetics on, just his stumps, would not be able to respond effectively in a critical situation. That's why he resorted to the use of a firearm.
Friday, September 12th, 2014. After 34 days of deliberation, the judge delivers her verdict to a packed courthouse.
Count 1, culpable homicide. The sentence imposed is a maximum imprisonment of 5 years.
Oscar Pistorius, by the jury, is found not guilty of murder, but he is found guilty of culpable homicide, so that does place a certain degree of responsibility upon Oscar.
Pistorius receives a prison sentence, a maximum of 5 years for culpable homicide, and a suspended 3-year sentence for reckless endangerment. And the Steenkamps are absolutely outraged, along with many others across the world.
Oscar begins serving his sentence in the hospital wing of a Pretoria prison. 10 months later, in August 2015, he's cleared to be released to house arrest.
In South Africa, the judicial system is set up so that if you are in fact sentenced to prison, you are able to be released having only served approximately 1/6 of your initial sentencing term. The remaining portion of the sentence has to be carried out in a basically house arrest situation.
But 2 days before Pistorius is set to go free, the High Court blocks his release. He'll spend 2 additional months behind bars. Monday, October 19th, 2015, Oscar is finally released to house arrest at his uncle's mansion in the Pretoria suburb of Waterkloof.
Coming out with such a lenient sentence and being allowed to live at a family member's address shows that here's somebody who has been able to get away with things at the cost of a young woman's life.
1 month into Pistorius' house arrest, South Africa's Supreme Court of Appeal overturns his culpable homicide conviction and finds him guilty of murder. The 5-judge panel bases their decision on the principle that Pistorius, who's well trained in the use of guns, should have known that firing his gun would have killed whoever was behind the door of his bathroom, regardless of whether that was Riva Steenkamp or an intruder. Gainesville, Florida. Thursday, August 23, 1990, 6:03 p.m. 17-year-old Christina Powell and 18-year-old Sonia Larson, freshmen at the University of Florida, are in a checkout line at a local Walmart. Classes start in 3 days. and the new roommates are buying odds and ends to decorate their apartment.
Christina Powell is a great student, wonderful girl. She is looking forward to starting her studies in architecture. Sonia Larson is bright, bubbly, loved by everyone. Both she and her roommate are on the cusp of beginning this adventure that is college and young adulthood.
Unbeknownst to them, they're being followed, shadowed, and tailed by an individual.
The man, a drifter who's been in town less than a week, follows the girls home to their apartment, which is just off campus. He leaves knowing where they live and makes plans to return later. Williamsburg Village Apartments, Friday, August 24th, 3 a.m. Christina and Sonia are asleep in their two-bedroom unit. A masked intruder jimmies open the rear door with a screwdriver. It's the same man who spotted them at Walmart, and he's armed with a knife, a pistol, and duct tape.
He sees Christina sleeping downstairs. He stands over her, watching her, and then he moves upstairs to Sonia's room. He finds Sonia in her bed.
He places a strip of duct tape over her mouth, repeatedly stabs her as she's fighting back until she's dead.
The killer then creeps downstairs, where Christina Powell remains sound asleep.
He puts a piece of duct tape over her mouth, secures her hands behind her back, and then uses the knife and cuts off all her clothes. He then violently rapes her and repeatedly stabs her until she, too, succumbs to her wounds.
Then he mutilates her body. He literally excises her nipples from her body, cuts them off, and keeps them in a plastic bag as souvenirs.
He ends up washing down Christina's body with soap in an effort to remove any type of physical evidence.
In one final deranged act, the killer eats an apple and a banana, leaving behind the peel as if nothing ever happened. He then exits the apartment, hops on his bicycle, and rides off into the dark night.
Christina and her roommate are left in pools of their own blood, and their bodies are staged in pornographic positions in such a way that it would be the greatest shock value to the first responders.
Christina and Sonia's lifeless bodies won't be discovered for 2 days. By then, another college student has already been targeted.
Krista Voigt is an 18-year-old honor student at a nearby community college in Gainesville. She works as a records clerk at the nearby Alachua County Sheriff's Office.
Gainesville, Florida, Saturday, August 25th, 1990, 10 p.m. A masked man enters Krista Voigt's apartment, Unit M.
He breaks in the back door using a screwdriver to pry open the door, gets inside, and Krista isn't home yet.
She's out playing racquetball with a friend.
He stays in her apartment in the shadows, waiting for her to return.
Voigt returns home around 10:30 p.m. As soon as she closes the door and places her keys on the table, the intruder attacks.
He surprises Krista, places her in a chokehold, duct tape over her mouth, secures her hands behind her back, takes her into the bedroom, cuts off all her clothes, and violently rapes her.
Once he's had his way with her, he rolls her over on her stomach and begins stabbing her from behind. She dies, struggling against his multiple stabs. He then decides to mutilate her body.
He cuts off the nipples and places them on the bed next to her torso.
The killer disappears into the night, only to return an hour later. He left his wallet at the scene. This time, he leaves behind a horrifying message for police.
He decapitates her and places her head on a bookshelf adjacent to the body.
So that anyone who were to enter that room would never, ever be able to get these images out of their mind.
Gatorwood Apartments, Monday, August 27th, 1990, 1 a.m. 23-year-old political science major Tracy Paulus is home alone, talking on the phone with a friend.
Tracy is in her senior year at Florida. She wishes to go to law school.
Tracy can't sleep. She's heard the news about Christina Powell and Sonia Larson being murdered less than a mile away. So she anxiously waits for her roommate Manny to get home from his bartending job.
Manny Tabota is 23 years old, 6'3", 200+ pounds. He's kind of her protector.
Tracy is relieved when Manny returns home shortly after 2:30 a.m.
But unfortunately, at about 3 a.m., their back door is broken into using a screwdriver.
Armed with a pistol and a knife, the intruder is looking for Tracy, who he's already stalked. Now, he must choose which room to enter first, the one that's closed with the lights on, or the one that's open with the lights off. He heads for the open, dark bedroom.
He finds Manny sleeping. Manny's stabbed 31 times. He's fighting back for his life and for Tracy's life. Unfortunately, he's mortally wounded.
Tracy hears the struggle and races to Manny's room. She cracks open the door and locks eyes with the killer.
She flees down the hallway, returns to her bedroom, tries to close the door and lock it, but is unable to do so.
The suspect chases after her, kicks in the door, grabs her, secures her hands, cuts off all her clothes with a knife, and then violently rapes and assaults her. He stabs her 3 times, through and through wounds to her back. These are fatal.
72 hours, 3 crime scenes, 5 students dead and disfigured, all within a 2-mile radius of the University of Florida's campus. A multi-agency task force is quickly formed to investigate the murders, which appear to be the wet work of the same killer.
You're looking at the same MO in terms of who he targets. They're all going to be duct taped. Their hands are tied behind their back.
The brutality of these crimes and the staging of the victims. This is the MO of a sadistic serial killer that wants not only to harm these victims, he wants everyone to be harmed by what he did.
MO isn't the only similarity. Stab wound analysis reveals that all of the victims had been killed by the same knife.
The murder weapon in all of these crimes appears to be a Marine-issue K-bar knife. Very, very sharp, and it's used for military combat.
It's pretty clear to investigators you have one individual who's committing all of these murders in the same fashion.
In late August 1990, panic reverberates through Gainesville, Florida, after 5 college students are savagely slain by a serial killer the media nicknames the Gainesville Ripper. Looking for clues, law enforcement processes more than 1,500 pieces of evidence recovered from the crime scenes.
There is physical evidence, there is trace evidence. There are fibers found on some of the scenes that indicate that the killer was wearing a ski mask while he was committing these crimes.
Just days after the killings, investigators identify University of Florida freshman Edward Humphrey as a person of interest. Humphrey used to live at the same apartment complex as Manny Taboda and Tracy Paulez, who he reportedly had a major crush on.
He openly boasted about wanting to commit murders and actually went to a bank teller and told him how he could basically dismember and flay a person with a knife. There was also documentation of the fact that he'd walk into people's apartments uninvited, so obviously he was a person of great concern.
In the Atlantic, Florida, Thursday, August 30th, 1990, 18-year-old Ed Humphrey is arrested after getting into a violent altercation with his grandmother.
Humphrey is immediately taken to a mental hospital for further evaluation. He's diagnosed psychologically as being a manic depressive.
Detectives interrogate the seemingly unstable student for nearly 24 hours. The more they question Humphrey, the more it seems like he has specific knowledge of the homicides. Authorities have nothing concrete to connect Ed Humphrey to the grisly crimes. But that doesn't stop the media from turning him into public enemy number 1.
He is placed in county jail on $1 million bail. The public assumes that the Gainesville Ripper is in fact in custody.
Hawaiian Village Apartments, Thursday, September 6th, 1990. Police execute a search warrant on Humphrey's apartment.
They're looking for possible murder weapon. They're looking for DNA of the victims that might be there.
Inside, officers get a bizarre glimpse into the mind of Edward Humphrey.
They see somebody that appears to have a split personality based merely on the condition of his apartment.
We had one portion of the apartment that was extremely neat, and the other portion was an absolute pigsty.
Police find several different screwdrivers and knives, but no murder weapon.
They didn't find any of the things that would directly link Mr. Humphreys to these crimes.
Even though they don't have any kind of definitive physical evidence to link Humphrey to the crimes, they still keep trying to build a case against him. One of the things that kind of bolsters law enforcement is the fact that upon Mr. Humphrey's arrest, there are no more killings.
Authorities visit Humphrey in jail to collect his saliva for DNA analysis. The results won't come back for weeks. In the meantime, on October 10th, 1990, Humphrey is convicted of battery for the incident with his grandma.
He is sentenced to 22 months in a state psychiatric hospital.
Later that month, the DNA analysis comes back.
It was negative. Humphreys was not the killer of the 5 young college students.
In late August 1990, the Gainesville Ripper savagely murders 5 college students near the University of Florida. A task force spends 2 months investigating Ed Humphrey, but DNA tests eliminate the 18-year-old freshman as a possible suspect. The case hits a roadblock.
November 4th, 1989, Tom Grissom, his daughter Julie, and his grandson are murdered inside their home in Shreveport. Each of the victims is repeatedly stabbed with a long-bladed instrument.
Stab wound analysis reveals the killer most likely used a military K-bar knife, just like the one used in the Gainesville killing spree.
It's a gruesome murder scene. Julie is the most brutally murdered and the most badly mutilated of the 3.
She was not only slashed repeatedly, she's covered in bite marks. Julie's body, remarkably, was washed down after the assault in an effort to remove any type of physical evidence, and then she is posed in a very sexually suggestive position, naked.
Authorities have little doubt that the person who callously murdered the Grissams is the Gainesville Ripper. Investigators develop a list of suspects who had been in Louisiana and Florida at the times of the respective murders. By December 1990, they've identified 36-year-old ex-con Danny Rolling as a person of interest. Rolling lived in Shreveport, Louisiana with his father James until May 1990, when a dispute between the two men turned violent.
They end up in a tremendously blown-out argument. Danny's father withdraws a pistol, points it at Danny. The two of them struggle over it. Ultimately, Danny is able to wrest control of the pistol and subsequently shoots his father not only in the head, but also in the stomach as well. Danny felt that he had killed his father at that point in time, so he flees the scene.
But James doesn't die. He survives the incident, is badly wounded, and Danny goes on the run. He begins to commit robberies, armed robberies, steal cars, steal everything he can so that he can flee the area.
From May 1990 to September 1990, Rolling drifts throughout the Southeast, passing through Gainesville, Florida, at the precise time the 5 co-eds are killed.
On September 8th, 1990, approximately 40 miles away from Gainesville in Ocala, Florida, he ends up in a Winn-Dixie supermarket where he tries to rob it.
In the middle of the afternoon, Danny takes the office manager at gunpoint, forces him to open the safe, takes some money out. But at that time, the bookkeeper for Winn-Dixie happens to return. She observes the robbery occurring and immediately calls 911.
He ends up jumping into a stolen car, gets in a pursuit with the police vehicles. He's not in great control of the vehicle and ends up crashing.
Danny subsequently attempts to escape on foot, but he's captured. He is placed in the Marion County Jail. So detectives are notified that Danny is actually in custody, and they start putting 2 and 2 together, and now suddenly they realize that we may very well have an individual of interest in the multiple murders that have occurred.
Ocala, Florida, Thursday, January 24th, 1991. Investigators visit Marion County Jail to fingerprint Danny Rolling and collect a blood sample. They've already confiscated some of his personal items, hair clippings from a recent prison haircut, and an extracted tooth, which was retrieved from a medical waste bin following a dental procedure the day before.
The samples are then sent to the lab, and we come back with a positive match on DNA profiling. He is, in fact, the Gainesville Ripper.
Law enforcement could have identified Rolling months earlier, just hours after the bodies of Manny Tabota and Tracy Paulus were discovered. Rolling stuck up a bank in Gainesville.
On August 27, 1990, the First Union Bank is robbed, and it's very close proximity to the residence of Krista Hoyt, who had been murdered in the Gainesville slashings.
Around 1 a.m. the following morning, police find Rolling and a buddy in the woods nearby. The friend stays and talks to officers. Rolling takes off.
Police pursue him into the woods, and as they're chasing him, they stumble upon a campsite.
Rolling escapes, but cops have unknowingly found his hideout, which is just off Archer Road, a short bike ride to each of the 3 Gainesville homicide scenes.
Searching the property at this campsite, they come across a stack of money, which has the pink dye pack exploded, so it's obvious that this was taken in the robbery. They also recover a number of additional items. This closely correlates to what was utilized in the previous killings.
They find duct tape, they find a large knife, they find a handgun, a screwdriver.
Cops also recover a ski mask and a tape recorder with a cassette inside. Investigators don't listen to the tape at the time. If they had, they would have known Rolling's name 5 months sooner.
I know I'll have to run the rest of my life, but I'm getting pretty good at it, if that means anything.
Now, in 1991, detectives revisit the evidence.
Remarkably, the ski mask has transfer of fiber particles from the duct tape, which do in fact match the fibers on the duct tape found on the victims. Blood on one pair of pants, actually DNA profiles, comes back to that of Manny's, one of the victims. And one of Krista Hoyt's pubic hairs is found within the interior of Danny's sleeping bag.
Before Rolling can be prosecuted for the student slayings, he must first face charges for the string of armed robberies he committed in September 1990.
September 1991, Danny is convicted on the Winn-Dixie robbery. He is sentenced to life in prison for that armed robbery. 1 month later, he is sentenced to 3 life terms in addition to 170 years for robbery, assault, and burglary.
In November 1991, 36-year-old convicted felon Danny Rolling is indicted for the grisly slayings of 5 college students in Gainesville, Florida.
He is charged with 5 counts first-degree murder, 3 counts of sexual battery, and 3 counts of armed burglary. On June 9, 1992, Danny remarkably enters a plea of not guilty on all counts.
Rolling maintains his innocence until 8 months later, when, out of the blue, he requests a meeting with law enforcement at the prison. Now, he wants to confess, but will only do so through fellow inmate and friend, Bobby Lewis.
So you have this bizarre circumstance where this sick, demented killer and his cellmate are doing this dog and pony show for the investigators and confessing to these 5 heinous murders.
In a 3-hour videotape confession, Danny sits silently, and all he does is simply confirm what it is that Lewis is saying as Lewis goes ahead and describes each of the murders in gross detail.
And rolled her over on her stomach, taking what is called a military K-bar knife and hit her 1 time in the heart region.
Danny shifts all the blame not on himself, but on an inner demon who he calls Gemini, and that's the one that's actually responsible for all these murders.
Then he cuts the head off and placed it as I described on the shelf.
Investigators don't buy Rolling's story. A simpler explanation lies in his childhood, which was rife with violence and trauma.
Despite the fact that his father is a police officer, he turns out to be very abusive, does not want the child, and in no uncertain terms makes it very clear to him that he hates him.
Danny suffers terrible, intolerable treatment at the hands of his father. He beats Danny regularly, twice a week, with a belt.
He marries a 19-year-old girl from a local church. For almost a year, he seems to have settled down. The unfortunate thing is the substance abuse follows him, and after their first child is born, in 1977, the 2 divorce. He is now without a job, without a wife, without a child. He still has substance abuse, so he starts to supplement his lifestyle by committing robberies and stealing cars.
Rolling is convicted of armed robbery twice. He serves 2 separate prison terms before being paroled in July 1988.
So now, after having served only a total of about 8 years, when he got well over 30 years worth of sentences, he's now on the loose. And he's an angry man who's now becoming violent.
Rolling vows to take 8 lives, 1 for each of the years the system stole from him. The Grissom family and the Gainesville students would become the innocent victims of his fury. Alachua County, Florida, Tuesday, February 15th, 1994. Danny Rolling, against the advice of his attorneys, pleads guilty in open court to the Gainesville homicides.
I've been running from first one thing and then another all my life. There are some things that you just can't run from, and this being one of those.
Rolling is sentenced to death on April 20th, 1994.
We, the jury, return the following advisory verdict that it imposed the death penalty upon Danny Harold Rolling.
Nashville, Tennessee, Sunday, February 16th, 1997, 7 a.m. Steve Hampton and Sarah Jackson prep for the morning rush at Captain D's restaurant. Hampton, a 25-year-old father of 3, has been working for the franchise since he was 15.
He worked his way up from a part-time employee until finally he was named the manager of the store.
16-year-old Sarah Jackson has been working at Captain D's for nearly 9 months.
Sarah Jackson is involved in a lot of different things at school and gets good grades. Her mother had to think twice about letting her work there with all her other activities. She's working part-time right down the street from where she lives.
8:15 a.m. Steve Hampton takes a call from his regional director. The conversation lasts approximately 15 minutes. 8:54 a.m. A woman drives past Captain D's and sees 2 men talking in the entryway.
She recognized Steve Hampton standing in the doorway, talking to a white male who was holding a white piece of paper. He had dark hair and was approximately 5 inches taller than Mr. Hampton.
The restaurant isn't supposed to be open for business until 10 a.m., but Hampton lets the man in.
Once inside the restaurant, the man pulled a gun that he had hidden on him.
The man forces Steve to open the store's safe.
He goes ahead and empties the safe of its contents. He takes both Steve and Sarah into the cooler and has them prone out, face down. He puts the muzzle to the back of Steve's head and presses the trigger. He shoots him then a second and third time as well.
The perpetrator turns to Sarah and fires 2 shots at close range into her head.
The gunman then enters the office, removes the surveillance tapes.
Suddenly, there's a noise coming from the cooler. The killer returns and finds Sarah Jackson struggling to pull herself up. He shoots her 2 more times, then flees the scene with the restaurant security tapes in hand. 9:30 a.m. A motorist drives past Captain D's and sees a tall, muscular white male walking hurriedly away from the restaurant. The man averts his eyes from the driver and gets into a parked car. Moments later, employee Michael Butterworth shows up for work. He goes to open the door. It's locked.
He looks through the windows. He sees that the chairs are still upended on top of the table, which is not the norm, so he becomes alarmed.
Butterworth walks around to the rear door and pounds on it. There's no answer. So he drives to a nearby business and borrows their phone.
He starts calling into the restaurant. There is no answer. So he calls one of the other employees of the restaurant, whose father's a police officer, to see if they can circumvent this problem and find out what's actually going on. Between 1100 to 1200 hours, the Nashville police enter the restaurant, and they discover the 2 bodies deceased in the freezer.
Investigators from robbery homicide arrive to process the scene.
There wasn't all that much in the way of evidence left behind. Some shoe prints on the floor, but no fingerprints itself. This criminal, this killer, was a bit more sophisticated than your average armed robber.
More than $7,000 has been stolen, including $250 in coins. Steve Hampton's wallet, which contained $600 in rent money, is also missing.
The next day, on a highway, about 12 miles away, an individual picking up trash on the side of the roadway comes across Steve Hampton's wallet with his identification in it. There's also a plasticized movie card, and it has a very distinctive thumbprint on it.
The print doesn't generate any immediate matches, so it's stored away as evidence. In the meantime, cops interview the Captain D's employees who worked the night shift prior to the shooting.
The police learned that at least some of them met somebody the night before, right around closing time.
Approximately 10 o'clock, an individual did in fact come into the restaurant and asked for a job application. He was wearing a Shoney's restaurant apron, claiming he was a cook and was looking for a change of workplace environment.
The nighttime manager at that point said, you know what, why don't you come back first thing tomorrow and talk to the full-time manager.
Nashville Police Headquarters, Saturday, February 22nd, 1997. Detectives administer photo lineups to 3 Captain D's employees to see if they can identify the suspicious night visitor.
They're unable to locate anybody who resembles the person that they're describing. But the police sketch artist comes up with a composite drawing.
Law enforcement shows the sketch to workers at the nearby Shoney's.
They ask, does this guy match any description? They say, yeah, we've got a guy that works here named Paul Reed. Interesting enough, though, Paul Reed had called in to Shoney's restaurant on the morning of the 16th and claiming that he had car trouble and couldn't make it to the restaurant. So the detectives then take Paul Reed's name, they run it through NCIC, National Crime Identification Check, comes back negative hits.
The investigation stalls. Hermitage, Tennessee, Sunday, March 23rd, 1997, 11 p.m. 27-year-old manager Ronald Santiago and 3 other McDonald's workers, 23-year-old Robert Sewell, 30-year-old Jose Gonzalez, and 17-year-old Andrea Brown, clock out for the evening.
Santiago unlocks the side door and everybody starts to exit the location. The man with a gun approaches, herds them all up, takes them straight back into a small office located in the rear of the location. The individual steals money from a safe and then he takes the entire group and places them into a dry storage room.
He executes the employees one by one.
Mr. Gonzalez is about to be executed and all of a sudden the weapon itself misfires.
Jose stood up and started fighting with the gunman. But the gunman was resourceful. He picked up a knife and he started stabbing Jose 17 times, actually, almost slicing off one of his fingers. Jose eventually went down and pretended he was dead.
The perpetrator flees the scene.
Knowing the gunman was finally gone, Jose managed to crawl his way to the phone and barely call 911.
This is 911. Please. What's wrong? Are you hurt? Please. Do you need an ambulance?
12:04 a.m. First responders arrive. They find Ronald Santiago and Robert Sewell dead.
They find Jose Gonzalez still breathing, but non-responsive.
Paramedics rush Gonzalez to the hospital. Surgeons work through the night to keep him alive. Andrea Brown has also been rushed to the ER, but doctors pronounce her brain dead. She's removed from life support the following morning. Meanwhile, homicide detectives process the McDonald's for forensic evidence. The spring of 1997, 5 Nashville, Tennessee fast food workers have been gunned down in 2 separate armed robberies, exactly 5 weeks apart. At the most recent crime scene, there was an eyewitness, Jose Gonzalez, who cops have under 24/7 surveillance at Vanderbilt University Medical Center.
Gonzalez is in pretty bad shape. He has knife wounds all over his body. He can't even really talk to the police when they come in. But through signs and symbols and nodding and eventually some whispering, he gives the best description he can of the killer that night.
Investigators compare the Gonzalez rendering to the one generated by Captain D's employees a month earlier.
Unfortunately, the composite sketch from the McDonald's location doesn't exactly match the composite sketch generated from the Captain D's restaurant location.
Despite the mismatch, law enforcement goes public just days later, announcing that the 2 crimes share some hard-to-ignore similarities. But authorities have 0 suspects in custody. Clarksville, Tennessee, Wednesday, April 23, 1997, 9:30 p.m. Angela Holmes and Michelle Mace are finishing up the night shift, serving ice cream to customers at a local Baskin-Robbins.
Angela Holmes is 21 years old. She's the night manager at the restaurant. She's a wife and a mother to a little girl. Michelle Mace is a 16-year-old high school student working part-time.
9:58 p.m. Angela escorts the final patron out of the restaurant, then locks the front door.
As the last customer is leaving, she notices a red car that slows down and turns into the parking lot at the Baskin-Robbins.
10:10 p.m. Michelle Mace's brother, Craig, arrives to pick her up from work.
He waits for approximately 15 minutes, never sees her, doesn't hear her, so starts making phone calls. No answer on the phones either.
Craig approaches the ice cream parlor.
He finds the front door to be unlocked, goes inside, all the lights are off, starts calling out to people. Nobody responds, something's wrong.
Michelle and Angela are nowhere to be found.
He runs back out and calls 911 immediately.
10:51 p.m. Police arrive at the scene. They find the top-to-the-floor safe on an office desk. The only money in the store is inside Michelle and Angela's purses, which seem to have been left behind.
Approximately $1,200 in cash was missing. The videotape from the surveillance system was also missing. Now, for the 3rd time, we have a robber taking money, taking the videotape.
But this time, crime scene technicians catch a break.
They found some viable shoe prints on the floor, as well as 3 identifiable latent fingerprints.
Obviously, there's been foul play. So the police start searching for the victims.
Within an hour or 2 that night, they were looking all over the metropolitan area for these 2 young women.
Dunbar Cave State Park, Thursday, April 24th, 1997, 7 a.m. A man walking his dog makes a grisly discovery.
The dog alerts him to the fact that there's a body in a nearby lake.
Investigators arrive and examine the body. It's a woman. Her hands have been bound behind her back with a Baskin-Robbins apron. They search the woods nearby for clues.
Approximately 100 feet away is a second victim.
The woman in the woods is Michelle Mace. The one in the water is Angela Holmes. In the spring of 1997, panic strikes metropolitan Nashville, Tennessee, after a suspected serial killer murders 7 service workers at 3 local fast food restaurants in the span of 67 days.
They have officers working undercover in the role of fast food employees who are obviously going to be armed should this individual attempt this again. They basically are going to set up and see if they can possibly catch him.
The killer doesn't take the bait. Weeks pass with no action. Jolton, Tennessee, Sunday, June 1st, 1997, 9 p.m. 45-year-old Mitch Roberts, who manages a Shoney's restaurant in Nashville, is home with his family. His son is recording this video when an unexpected visitor shows up at the front door.
It's his former employee, and his name is Paul Reed.
Roberts had fired Reed back on February 27th, which was 11 days after the Captain D's murders. Now, Reed is on his doorstep, begging for his old job back.
Mitchell informs him he can't hire him back.
Roberts walks Reed to his car.
Paul Reed pulled a gun on him, pulled handcuffs out of his pocket, instructed Mitchell to put them on, and said, "You're coming with me."
Mitch runs back to his front door. Reed follows. Only now, he's armed with a knife. At the porch, Paul rushes his former boss, but Roberts fights back.
He pushes Paul Reed, slams the door in his face, yells to his wife to get a gun, despite the fact he doesn't own a firearm. He's just trying to use this, obviously, as a slight intimidation tactic.
The tactic works. Reed runs back to his car and speeds off. Minutes later, Mitch Roberts is in his living room recounting the crazy events to law enforcement when something even crazier happens.
The phone rings. Who is it? Paul Reed. He wants to apologize.
Roberts, at the officer's request, coaxes Reed to return to the house.
When Mr. Reed arrives at the location, he is taken down into custody immediately.
Sheriff's deputies escort Reed back to the station.
They book Mr. Reed, they interview him, he gives them a false birth date. Due to the fact he gave an erroneous birth date, there's no solid ping on him in NCIC, which is National Crime Identification Check.
Reed is booked into Cheatham County Jail for assault, but could be released on bail in no time. Mitchell Roberts is determined not to let that happen. Believing his former employee is the fast food killer, Roberts presses the authorities to file more severe charges.
The police decided that they would in fact charge Paul Reed with attempted kidnapping and aggravated assault. So that made sure he wouldn't get out that night. So now they had him in custody and they could do the rest of the investigation, which was just about to kick into high gear.
Officers quickly reach out to Jose Gonzalez, the lone survivor from the murder spree.
Mr. Gonzalez goes through over 300 photos and he picks out Paul Reed as the individual who perpetrated the attack.
Detectives revisit the fingerprint they found on Steve Hampton's movie card.
It was the fingerprint of Paul Reed that put him at the scene of Captain D's. On the bottom of Paul Reed's shoes are DNA exemplars which are related to both of the employees at the Baskin-Robbins restaurant.
Investigators search Reed's car, a red Ford Escort. Fibers taken from the backseat and floor mats match fibers found on the clothing of Michelle Mace and Angela Holmes. In June 1997, police in Nashville, Tennessee finally have 39-year-old short-order cook Paul Dennis Reed in custody. Detectives interrogate Reed for 8 hours, believing the ex-con is responsible for the murders of 7 fast food workers during a 2-month killing spree.
Please just do your own homework. I am not the killer.
Mr. Reed is going to emphatically deny that he has anything to do with any of the murders.
You understand, if we didn't have the evidence, you would be in that chair right now.
Pardon me?
But just overwhelming evidence against him, so they're going to, in fact, charge him with all these murders, and they're going to take him to trial.
Prosecutors will spend the next year and a half building their case against Reed. Who exactly is Paul Dennis Reed?
Paul Reed is born in Fort Worth, Texas, November 1957. His parents divorced when he was approximately 3 years old. Father is a raging alcoholic.
Young Paul spends lots of time with his paternal grandmother, who he terrorizes by putting tacks in her food, spraying her with a water hose, and barricading her in her room.
At one point, he attempted to set his grandmother on fire while she was asleep in her bed.
By the time he's a teenager, neither of his parents want him around.
When Paul's 16, he attempts to sexually assault both his mother and his sister, so his mother kicks him out of the house. He goes back to live with his father, but there he attempts to sexually assault his other sister. He ends up getting kicked out of that house and ends up being arrested for auto theft.
Paul receives 3 years probation, but he isn't scared straight. Instead, he delves deeper into a life of crime.
He has robberies, he has check fraud, he has auto theft, so he's got quite an extensive record that he's wrapping up here.
In April 1984, Reed is sentenced to 20 years behind bars for robbing 4 restaurants and a hardware store.
Paul was released after only serving 7 years. Several criminal justice professionals and experts told as many people as they could he's a danger to society, he's going to hurt somebody else, but it didn't matter. He did his 7 years, the prisons were too crowded, it was time to put Paul on the streets. That was a big mistake.
Less than a year out, Reed is working as a truck driver in Fort Worth, Texas, when he gets into a horrific accident. He receives nearly 2 years of workman's comp and a $25,000 settlement.
What did he choose to spend it on? Plastic surgery. He had a skin peel, he had his ears pinned back, he had some dental work done to straighten out his teeth because he had a new goal. He wanted to be a country western singer. Took some music lessons, and where should he move to further that career? Nashville, Tennessee.
But reality quickly sets in. Within a month, Reed's working as a cook at a local restaurant. Before long, he turns back to what he knows, armed robbery. Only this time, he vows to never again leave any witnesses. Fast forward to April 1999. Paul Reed will spend the next 13 months in court facing 3 separate capital murder trials. First, for the Captain D's murders. Second, for the Baskin-Robbins slayings. And last, for the triple homicide at McDonald's.
They're going to ask for the death penalty in each of these trials.
The prosecution presents several witnesses to illustrate that Reed is in fact the killer. They also present the salient fact that Reed was in debt, but he had large amounts of cash in his possession, so why didn't he pay off the debts? Because obviously he had just recently acquired in a very nefarious manner all this cash. So it goes to motive.
Prosecutors also have Jose Gonzalez, the lone surviving eyewitness to the murders.
That's him?
The naranja.
The one in orange.
Let the record reflect he did identify the defendant.
So reflective.
He was the final nail in the coffin of Paul Reed when the jury heard what he had to say.
Reed does not take the witness stand in any of the 3 trials. The heart of his defense is the argument that head injuries suffered throughout his life have rendered him with a broken brain. His lawyers provide the courts with brain scans and testimony from doctors who diagnose Reed with 4 conditions, including chronic paranoid schizophrenia and anosognosia, a symptom of psychosis in which a person cannot recognize that he or she is sick.
His defense is going to throw up on the wall that Reed had many mental deficits, head traumas, which led him to commit the crimes that he did. Therefore, he's not culpable. The only problem with that theory is the fact that if you're that mentally damaged, then you're probably not going to be able to sit there and plan all these things out.
None of the judges or juries buy Reed's claims of diminished capacity.
You have been found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder in counts 1, 2, and 3.
Paul Reed was convicted in a total of 7 counts of murder, 1 of attempted murder, and assigned the death penalty.
Reed spends several years appealing his convictions.
In a strange series of events, in March of 2003, Paul Reed writes a letter. He wants to drop all of his appeals of his death sentence. His execution date is set for April 28th. The families of the victims actually show up at the prison. At the last minute, almost literally, Paul chickens out.
Nashville, Tennessee, Friday, November 1st, 2013, 5:55 p.m. Paul Dennis Reed dies of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and pneumonia. Newport Beach, California, Thursday, December 15th, 1994, 6:30 p.m. 55-year-old multimillionaire Bill McLaughlin returns home from a business trip. He sees a Post-it note on a lampshade from his fiancée stating that she's at her son's soccer game.
Bill appears to have everything in life. He has a great house in Newport Beach. He has a private plane, a boat, and also houses in San Diego and Hawaii.
7 p.m. Bill eats dinner with his 24-year-old son, Kevin, who's been struggling with debilitating injuries ever since he was struck by a car while skateboarding. Around 8 o'clock, Kevin goes upstairs to watch TV. Bill lounges around the kitchen.
What he doesn't realize is that somebody else is there.
Around 9 p.m., an intruder sneaks into the house through the front door, creeps up on McLaughlin, and pumps 6 hollow-point bullets into him at close range. Kevin hears the shots and goes to inspect. The shooter flees.
While it took him a few minutes, Kevin managed to make his way downstairs. He saw his father was in very bad shape.
Newport Beach emergency, please fire paramedics. What's the problem there, number 67 Balboa Cove?
Because of his brain damage, he finds it really difficult to articulate what's happening.
I can't understand what you're saying. Okay, we have an officer on the way to your house right now.
Paramedics arrive minutes later, but it's too late. Bill McLaughlin is pronounced dead on the scene.
The crime scene was relatively pristine. No fingerprints, no fluids, no DNA, not even any footprints were left behind. The murder weapon itself was taken with the offender. There was no apparent motive for this crime.
The perfect crime, except for one odd detail. 2 keys left behind at the crime scene.
One of them was to the door of the home, and the second key was to an exterior gate that any resident or guest would need to get into the property itself. Whoever the killer was just discarded them at the scene.
Police run down the list of people who could have had keys to Bill McLaughlin's house.
As in any homicide, investigators start from the inner perimeter. Who are the people closest to the victim?
Given that Kevin is in the home address at the time that his father's killed and that he calls 911, he does become a suspect.
They did what's called gunshot residue test of his hands. and they could determine that night that there was no chemicals associated with the firing of a weapon on his hands. So he was pretty much ruled out right away.
Bill's 2 daughters and also his ex-wife are questioned, but they all have alibis.
With McLaughlin's immediate family ruled out, police set their sights on his much younger fiancée, 29-year-old Nanette Johnston.
What were your activities today? Say start around noon.
At noon, I was shopping. I came back here, the housekeeper was here. I wrote her a check. And I picked up some stuff for my son that had a soccer game in Diamond Bar.
All right.
And so I went up there.
It seems she was very visible there, engaged in conversations with people.
It was over at about 8. We had double overtime. Then I went over to South Coast Plaza, Christmas shop for a few things.
She has receipts to prove that she was where she said she was.
Nanette Johnston had a lock-solid alibi that night.
Police widen the net and start to speak with other friends and family.
Bill had a prophetic conversation with his brother just the night before he was murdered. He felt that there was some person or force somehow involved in his life that wanted him dead.
Many people said that Bill was extremely kind and generous, but there was another side to him. He was incredibly astute and cunning when it came to business, and he was a complete entrepreneur. Bill had a real passion for improving pharmaceutical products, and he would spend hours and nights in his garage in Orange County tinkering with development of new designs and new products. In the 1980s, Bill comes up with a groundbreaking device that goes on to earn him millions.
Detectives wonder if the person who wanted Bill McLaughlin dead is someone he encountered or even possibly slighted on his way to becoming a self-made millionaire. The investigation stalls until Bill McLaughlin's daughters push authorities to take a closer look at their father's fiancée, Nanette Johnston.
Bill's children felt that all was not well and that Johnston's motivations were not pure.
McLaughlin and Johnston's relationship began in May 1991, a year after he and his wife decided to end their 25-year marriage.
The bottom of his world falls out, and he starts to seek solace in personal ads. Bill responds to one single ad, single white female, 25, 5'5", 100 pounds, which clearly says, if you take care of me, I'll take care of you.
Bill was smitten with Nanette right away.
Johnston uses her sex appeal to finagle her way into McLaughlin's heart and wallet.
She soon became his bookkeeper with benefits, and those benefits included a Mercedes-Benz, credit cards, and an expense account. She immediately moved into his house and also brought along her 2 children.
Bill McLaughlin has no idea that Nanette has a history of bilking bucks out of unsuspecting bachelors.
Johnston was born in Chicago. She drops out of high school, but she manages to earn a GED.
18-year-old Nanette marries personal trainer Kevin K. Ross Johnston in November 1983.
They go on to have 2 children, and to the outside world, they seem to be very happy. But underneath, she craves money and power and possessions. Johnston starts flirting with men and having affairs. Her husband catches her and files for a divorce. She moves to Orange County and starts seeking out wealthy men.
In November 1990, prior to landing the big fish, Bill McLaughlin, Nanette reels in 28-year-old bouncer Tom Reynolds.
He thinks that they're building a happy life together, but in the background, she's running up huge debts, and she's starting to go on the personal ads, trying to seek out wealthy men. When she and Tom split up, she leaves him $91,000 in debt.
She was looking for just the kind of man to take care of her, and Bill McLaughlin fit that role exactly. She was handling his money, she had power of attorney at some point, and she was doing a whole lot of things for him, both inside the house and outside.
After a year, Bill proposes to Johnston and writes her into his will, and also takes out $1 million life insurance policy with her as sole beneficiary. Bill thinks that everything's going really well in this relationship, but what he doesn't realize is that Johnston's already cheating on him with another man.
In late December 1994, police in Newport Beach, California, are investigating the murder of millionaire Bill McLaughlin. Authorities take a close look at McLaughlin's inner circle. They quickly turn their attention to his fiancée, Nanette Johnston.
Any idea at all who would want to harm him?
I wish I had something to tell you. I wish I knew. I can't think of anybody.
Johnston has an airtight alibi. On the night of the shooting, she was at her son's youth soccer match in Diamond Bar, California.
One key thing stands out. Nanette Johnston wasn't alone at the soccer game. She was with a man called Eric Naposki, and she was introducing him to others as her boyfriend.
Eric Naposki was a naturally gifted athlete. He played a few years in the National Football League and a few years in the European Football League. Next thing you know, he's living in Southern California.
Naposki and Johnston met at a gym in Irvine, California back in the summer of 1992. They've been carrying on an intimate relationship behind Bill McLaughlin's back.
Johnston tells Naposki that she's the business partner to Bill and that she's living in his house and he's also mentoring her.
So we have here the lovers triangle.
Newport Beach, California, Friday, December 23rd, 1994, 2:15 a.m. Police pull over Eric Naposki on an outstanding traffic warrant and take him back to the station house for questioning.
Am I in trouble for something? I hope not. I hope not, too, because I don't understand.
Officers questioned Naposki about his relationship with Nanette Johnston that night.
What is your involvement or relationship? Nanette's a pretty good friend of mine. Can you define good friend? Yeah, we've been friends for 2.5 years.
Eventually, Eric admits they've been dating, and he's hoping they'll get married.
All right, how about Bill McLaughlin? Did you ever? I never met Bill. You know who he is? I knew of him and his, his partnership with Nanette as far as business goes.
Officers talk to Eric about searching his truck.
But I mean, there's nothing in there that I'm scared of you seeing. Well, sure, the officers already searched it. Yeah, they did. I mean, they went through the whole thing. I'm not worried about it. You can look through it.
Meanwhile, officers begin searching Naposki's SUV. Inside, they find Eric's daily planner. On one of the pages, there's a handwritten note with a license plate number written on it. Cops run the number. It's registered to Bill McLaughlin's white Mercedes. By mid-January, as law enforcement continues to investigate Naposki, they get a lead on the mysterious keys left at the crime scene.
Somehow the killer had to get copies of keys to enter the property that night. There was no forced entry. So the investigators went around to all the local hardware stores.
They traced those keys to a hardware store in Tustin, which was the very place where Eric Naposki was living, and the store manager actually remembered Naposki requesting that a duplicate set of keys were made.
When police were interviewing Nanette, they asked to look at her keychain, and she was supposed to have 4 keys on it, but one was missing, and she couldn't really give a good explanation for that.
Tustin, California, Thursday, January 19th, 1995, 11:50 a.m. Homicide investigators pay an impromptu visit to Eric Naposki at home to ask him additional questions.
Naposki is very evasive about a 9mm Beretta that he had, which interestingly was the same weapon that was used to kill Bill.
Where is your 9mm? I have no idea. You have no idea? That's my statement. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Cops press Naposki for details about his whereabouts on the night of McLaughlin's murder.
You don't have an alibi for the time period that this murder occurred. Are you aware of that? No, I'm not. I think I do.
Naposki says that he's with Johnston at the soccer game and that she then drives him back to Tustin.
According to Naposki, he got home around 9 p.m., spent a few minutes there, then started driving to his security job at a local nightclub in Newport Beach, which was about 20 minutes away.
Naposki claims that he's on his way to work and he receives a page from his boss, and that he pulls over at Denny's to make a phone call to him and uses the payphone there.
I talked to a guy named, he's not there anymore, but he was the alcohol manager. Yeah, he called me to wonder where I was, if I was coming in. Remember what time he paged you? No. Were you already on my phone bill?
Naposki makes it clear to the police that it couldn't have been him that murdered Bill, because police had timed Bill's death at about 9 o'clock that evening, and that was at Newport Beach, which was over 12 miles away.
So you feel that I had enough time to leave the soccer game and get to Bill's house, do what I had to do there, and then get to work and not miss a beat the whole time? Unless you can give us... You feel that that's the case. That's actually feel that's the scenario. That's the scenario.
Coincidentally, Thunderbird nightclub, where Eric works, is just a 3-minute walk from Bill McLaughlin's house.
Of course, I work right across the street. That's another point where it makes it really easy for me just to go. I mean, do you guys think I'm an idiot? Would I do something like that and walk across the street to work? I mean, come on, man, give me a break.
Well, this guy came across kind of cocky, and he was sort of playing with them, sort of mind games, and wasn't being all that cooperative.
Earlier that day, Nanette Johnston had also stonewalled police when they questioned her at her residence in Newport Beach.
If we find you somehow implicated, you're not going to get any type of insurance settlement.
Well, you're not going to find me implicated because I'm not.
I don't want to have to yank you away from your kids. But if I find you're lying to us or you hide something because you feel for Eric, I know you do. But if I find you are covering up for him somehow, we will come after you.
I'm sure you would, and I would expect you to.
We will. I guarantee you we will.
Well, you won't because I didn't do anything.
February 1995, just weeks after wealthy inventor Bill McLaughlin is gunned down in his waterfront California home, homicide detectives begin to suspect that his fiancée, Nanette Johnston, and the man she'd been having an affair with, Eric Naposki, had something to do with the murder. They don't have any indication of a possible motive until McLaughlin's daughters, Jenny and Kim, come forward with an unsettling discovery.
Kim notices that there's $250,000 missing from his bank account. The $250,000 check is dated the 14th of December, the day before Bill is murdered. It turns out that the signature is a forgery, and the person who cashed the check is Nanette Johnston. Searching through more of the checks, the two daughters find that close to $500,000 has been embezzled.
In the months after Bill's murder, Eric Naposki moved into the McLaughlin estate with Nanette.
Before long, the press starts to dig into Johnston's past.
A number of newspaper articles are written about Nanette Johnston's engagement to Bill, and this comes as a total surprise to Eric Naposki.
Without a murder weapon or forensics linking Naposki or Johnston to the crime scene, law enforcement's investigation of the former lovers hits a dead end.
So the case went dormant.
In October 1995, Naposki moves back to his hometown in Connecticut. By March 1996, Johnston finds herself moving into a jail cell after pleading guilty to forgery and theft charges. Nanette is released from prison after 180 days.
She's quick to reinvent herself, marrying once more and having another child. The marriage lasts for 7 years in total, and she ends up receiving $17,000 a month in child support. Within months of that divorce, she marries again and ends up having another child.
By August 2006, Nanette Johnston is finally living the lifestyle she's always wanted. As for Eric Naposki, he'd long since started a new life of his own in Greenwich, Connecticut. The Bill McLaughlin murder case is the last thing on Naposki or Johnston's radars until 2007, when a new detective pulls the cold case file and reopens the investigation. Greenwich, Connecticut, Wednesday, May 20th, 2009, 8:30 a.m. Police move on Eric Naposki as he's driving to work.
Naposki's in his car. They arrest him for the murder of Bill McLaughlin. That same day, 3,000 miles away in Orange County, Nanette Johnston is also arrested for murder.
In May 2009, nearly 14 years after the cold-blooded killing of Bill McLaughlin, Nanette Johnston and her ex-boyfriend Eric Naposki are indicted on first-degree murder charges. Both plead not guilty. Orange County Superior Court. Monday, June 20th, 2011, the Eric Naposki murder trial gets underway. The prosecution argues that Johnston, with her stories of Bill McLaughlin's alleged abuse, manipulated Naposki to kill. Prosecutors allege that Eric killed Bill McLaughlin in order for Johnston to collect the $1 million life insurance payout, which would subsidize their future together.
Nanette Johnston and Eric Naposki were shopping for multi-million-dollar homes prior to the murder, despite the fact they didn't have a dollar between them.
The prosecution calls star witness Suzanne Koger, who lived next door to Naposki back in 1994.
And she testified that prior to the homicide, he confided in her that he wanted to see this Bill McLaughlin guy dead.
Naposki owned a 9mm Beretta, and he tells his next-door neighbor that that's the type of gun the killer used. By revealing this to his neighbor, Naposki inadvertently incriminates himself.
Naposki's defense team points the finger solely at Nanette Johnston.
They insist that Nanette Johnston could have easily accessed the house and driven into that gated community and killed Bill.
After 4.5 weeks of testimony, the jury finds Eric Naposki guilty of first-degree murder.
The judge sentenced Eric to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Orange County Superior Court. Monday, January 9th, 2012, Nanette Johnston goes to trial for her part in the first-degree murder of Bill McLaughlin. The prosecution paints Johnston as a gold-digging femme fatale who manipulates Naposki to murder her wealthy fiancé. Nanette stood to inherit more than $1.1 million upon Bill McLaughlin's death. Johnston's defense concedes that she embezzled money from McLaughlin, but maintains that Naposki acted alone, out of jealousy, when he pumped 6 bullets into Bill McLaughlin at close range. The jury doesn't buy her story.
After a 2.5-week trial, Nanette was guilty of the murder of Bill McLaughlin, and she was sentenced to life in prison.
Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Friday, April 1st, 2005, 3 p.m. 43-year-old Laura Ling is working her research librarian job at Socastee Library.
Laura Ling is a divorced mother of 3, and her 2 sons live with their father, and her daughter Christina lives with her.
That afternoon, Laura's boyfriend Stephen, who's been living with her and Christina for the past 4 months, visits Ling at the library. He's just been fired from his job.
He's let go because he's a salesperson and he's not making the sales.
Stephen's problems maintaining employment causes a lot of tension in the relationship.
Laura Ling realizes that she can't support them all on her librarian salary. One of her friends also tells her that Stephen has dead eyes and that she should reassess her relationship with him.
Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. Thursday, April 7th, 2005, 11:45 p.m. Laura and Stephen get into a heated exchange at home.
She tells him that she can't do this anymore and that she needs to rectify this situation.
The argument soon turns physical. Somehow, Stephen's cigarette dislodges from his mouth and ends up stuck between his glasses and face, burning his cheek. He starts punching Laura, then grabs a necktie, throws her onto the bed, and binds her wrists behind her back.
At around 12:30 a.m., Christina Ling is sleeping in her bedroom, and her bedroom light is turned on. Stephen has a knife, and she's terrified.
While he's trying to tie her hands, she flees. She's able to get down the hall to her mother's bedroom. She sees her mother bound and gagged on the bed, writhing and kicking against the headboard.
Christina's knocked unconscious.
Stephen ruthlessly beats Laura until Christina regains consciousness.
He then turns his attention back to Christina.
He literally straddles her, and he's holding a knife to her throat. And he says, "Make a noise, and you both die."
He forces himself upon her and rapes her. And he carries on, strangling and beating her mother afterwards.
He puts a knee in her back, holds her down, and then strangles Laura Ling to death. He tells the daughter, "See what you did? I really loved her."
The nightmare isn't over for Christina Ling.
He then takes his knife and slits Christina's throat twice.
He checks the pulse on both victims, finds no pulse on either of them, and then he nonchalantly goes in and takes a shower.
Laura's demented boyfriend takes his time searching the house for any money or credit cards.
He removes a gold bracelet from Laura's wrist and then jumps in her Mustang and leaves the crime scene.
Stephen's first stop is Ling's bank, where he uses her debit card at the drive-up ATM.
The surveillance camera at the ATM picks him up, emptying Laura Ling's account of $700.
Stephen appears calm and unhurried, despite the brutality he's just inflicted. He has no idea that Christina Ling is still alive.
She is able to get up immediately after he leaves the house. She dials 911.
Can I help you?
At my house, and I've been raped.
Okay. What's your address?
Mom is dead.
Pardon?
My mom is dead. Oh, God, this is supposed to happen to me.
She tells the operator that she's been raped and that her mother's been killed.
The dispatcher stays on the phone with Christina for 16 long minutes, while EMS is en route.
I tried to put up a fight. I tried. I really did.
She describes the killer to the police, who arrive while she's still on the phone with 911.
Did you see who did it?
Yes. It was my mom's boyfriend,
What's his name?
Steven Stanko.
Paramedics arrive and rush Christina to hospital, where she receives life-saving treatment.
The doctors sew up the injuries in her neck before they conduct an examination and use a rape kit to get DNA evidence.
Meanwhile, Stanko heads north, completely oblivious that he's already become the target of a widespread manhunt. Conway, South Carolina, Friday, April 8th, 2005. 4 a.m. Steven Stanko shows up at the house of his friend, Henry Turner.
Henry Lee Turner is a 74-year-old grandfather and Air Force retiree who attended one of Laura Ling's classes for senior citizens at the local library, learning how to use computers and such.
Stanko is looking to line his pockets on the way out of town. He'd called Turner a half hour earlier and told him a bogus story to play on his emotions.
He explains that his father had just died. Turner feels bad for him.
After talking for a while, Stanko borrows Turner's truck and goes to pick up breakfast.
Turner calls his girlfriend, who he adores, and explains he's helping this friend with the loss of his father and that he would see her later.
Steven returns around 6:30 that morning, carrying a bag of McDonald's.
So after enjoying a delightful breakfast from McDonald's, Turner goes in the bathroom to shave.
With Turner out of sight, Stanko rummages through the house. He finds what he's looking for, a gun. He then grabs a pillow off the bed to use as a makeshift silencer and heads for the bathroom.
Ends up shooting his friend, once in the back and once in the chest.
With Henry Turner dead on the floor, Stanko searches the home for valuables. He pockets some cash and another gun, then takes off in Turner's truck. On April 8, 2005, 37-year-old South Carolina native Steven Stanko strangles his girlfriend Laura Ling to death, then rapes her daughter Christina before cutting her throat and leaving her for dead. Just hours later, Stanko guns down his friend Henry Turner, steals his truck, and heads west, completely unaware that cops everywhere are already looking for him as part of a massive manhunt.
The killer leaves Conway, South Carolina, in Turner's black Mazda truck. He's looking for a drink.
Augusta, Georgia, Saturday, April 9th, 2005, 7 p.m. Steven Stanko is at a local oyster bar rubbing elbows with golf fans and watching the Masters tournament.
At Reinhardt's bar in Augusta, Georgia, Steven Stanko meets a 30-year-old woman named Dana Putnam.
He tells her that he's a businessman in town temporarily and he's looking at possibly getting a place in Augusta.
They end up drinking, dancing, and talking the night away. Dana realizes that he's too drunk to drive, and she offers him her sofa.
The next morning, Steven accompanies Dana and her parents to church. Following the services, Stanko takes Putnam out to a fancy restaurant and gives her a gold bracelet. The gold bracelet he boosted from Laura Ling.
So Dana is very giddy when she calls her grandmother and explains she met this great guy, Stephen Christopher, and she really likes him, and she thinks there's a future between them.
Augusta, Georgia, Tuesday, April 12th, 2005. Dana Putnam receives a call from her mother that turns her world upside down.
Her mother says, look at page 5B of the newspaper.
There's a picture of a man who's killed 2 people and raped a young girl.
Dana's mother says, I believe that's your Stephen Christopher.
Dana immediately drives to the local sheriff's department and tells them everything she knows about the new man in her life.
The police are able to get a Title III authority to wiretap her phone. Within hours, she does receive a call from her Stephen Christopher. They're able to quickly triangulate on the location of the phone, and they realize it's a local mall. Police respond to the mall, and they see Henry Turner's stolen pickup truck parked in the parking lot of the mall.
Augusta Exchange Mall, Tuesday, April 12, 2005. 3 p.m. Steven Stanko is inside the food court eating lunch.
Eventually, he exits the mall. As he approaches the stolen truck, he's immediately apprehended by federal and local authorities.
They reveal his identity to be Steven Stanko.
Cops search the truck, which Stanko had stolen from Henry Turner. They recover a .357 Magnum, bullets, and Turner's checkbook. Ballistics tests later confirmed that the Magnum was the weapon used to murder Turner. Just 4 days into the manhunt, law enforcement's finally got their guy.
Stanko is charged with unlawful flight to avoid prosecution and booked into a Georgia jail.
Stanko is extradited back to South Carolina to face charges for the murders of Laura Ling and Henry Turner. When law enforcement runs Stanko's name, they discover he has a criminal record, including a conviction for the attempted murder of a former girlfriend. April 12, 2005, following a 4-day manhunt, police arrest Steven Stanko in Georgia and extradite him back to South Carolina. Stanko's accused of murdering his girlfriend Laura Ling, raping and attempting to kill her teenage daughter, then gunning down his friend Henry Turner in cold blood. Law enforcement will spend the next 16 months prepping for trial against the unemployed 37-year-old, who, on the surface, seems like the last person who'd be facing murder charges.
Steven Stanko was born on January the 13th, 1968.
He's born in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, because his father is an officer in the United States Navy and he's stationed there. He's thought of as brilliant by his teachers and those around him, and he looks like he'll have a very bright future.
When Steven's just 15, his older brother Billy dies in a mysterious house fire, which causes his father to disengage from the family. Stanko desperately seeks his dad's attention and approval, but never receives it.
Steven dreams of joining the US Air Force Academy, and he really wants to make his father proud. He's devastated to receive a rejection letter from the Academy.
After being rejected by the Air Force, kind of wandered off into petty crimes and had no real focus in his life.
Digging deeper into Stanko's background, it's clear to authorities that the Air Force reject is a compulsive liar with a history of preying upon vulnerable women.
In 1992, Steven Stanko meets a woman named Liz McClendon.
Liz McClendon is a divorced mother with a young son. Initially, she finds him quite creepy, but he manages to charm her, and they share a love of music and start dating.
Before long, Stanko is telling his new girlfriend one tall tale after the next.
Stanko tells Elizabeth that he attended art school and owned a mansion.
The truth is, Steven Stanko is flat broke.
Steven has a tough time holding on to jobs. Even when he's unemployed, he carries on this false aroma of a legitimate and successful life, and he literally dons a suit and leaves the home for 10 hours every day as if he's going to work, even when he's not.
Stanko's constant scheming does catch up to him. Liz confronts Steven about jewelry that's disappeared, blank checks that have been stolen from her purse, and even a missing painting. Stanko snaps.
He attempts to strangle her.
Stanko eventually releases his vice from McClendon's neck, leaving her gasping in horror.
She calls the police. The police do arrive at the scene, and Stanko manages to charm them into his version of events. And so the police leave, telling Elizabeth to leave, despite the fact that it's her house.
The couple breaks up, but that's not the end of it.
He moves down to Atlanta, Georgia, where he latches onto another single mother, but he continuously calls Elizabeth, trying to re-engage their relationship.
One day in September 1995, Steven shows up on Liz McClendon's South Carolina doorstep. McClendon eventually allows Stanko back into her home.
So he ends up rekindling with Elizabeth, ends up getting a job at a car dealership where he's working in sales.
In mid-February 1996, Stanko's fired from the dealership. That same month, authorities question him about a used car business he's been running on the side and alleged grand theft auto.
Immediately, Elizabeth becomes suspicious of this situation. She literally tells him to sleep on the couch.
Stephen responds by hurling a box of tissues at Liz. She throws it back. He retaliates by slamming her to the floor. McClendon dials 911, but Stanko hangs up the phone before the call can be completed. She tries again.
Enough of the call gets through that 911 gets her number, and they then return the call to her. She answers the phone and says, "My boyfriend was just leaving. If he doesn't leave, I'll call 911 again."
Elizabeth McClendon tries to get some sleep, but she awakes to the smell of ammonia. The cloth is put over her mouth, and Stanko is in front of her saying, "We can't have you calling the police now, can we?"
Eventually, he removes the rag from her mouth.
Stanko ties her up and gags her.
He leaves her sitting on the toilet, bound and gagged. He takes off in a stolen GMC Jimmy and drives about 200 miles into the Blue Ridge Mountains.
He stops in Greenville, South Carolina, and rents a motel room. From there, he calls Elizabeth, claiming that he's spent the night soul-searching and is suicidal. The police manage to trace the call to Days Inn.
Cops swarm the hotel and arrest Stephen Stanko without incident.
Stanko pleads guilty to charges of kidnapping and aggravated assault and is sentenced to 10 years in prison. Stanko is also diagnosed with borderline narcissistic personality disorder.
Stanko serves his time from 1996 to 2004 like a model prisoner.
He meticulously keeps notes on everything he's dealing with while in there, literally handwriting 2,000 pages of a manuscript, and he expects to create a book to have published.
Stanko's book is released on April 30th, 2004. Less than 3 months later, he's out on the streets. 9 months after that, he murders Laura Ling and almost kills her 15-year-old daughter. Georgetown County, South Carolina, Monday, August 7th, 2006. Stephen Stanko stands trial for the murder of Laura Ling and the rape of Christina Ling.
The really key witness is Christina Ling, 15 years old, who recounts in vivid detail not only her own rape and attempted murder, but watching Stanko beat and strangle her mother to death.
The defense argues that Stephen Stanko is legally insane. It's up to the jury to decide. On August 14, 2006, after just 2 hours of deliberation, they convict Stanko on all counts.
He's convicted in the murder of Laura Ling. He's convicted in the attempted murder of Christina Ling, the sexual assault of Christina, and the kidnapping of both Christina and Laura Ling.
4 days later, the jury recommends the death penalty. Horry County, South Carolina, Friday, November 13, 2009. Stephen Stanko is back in court, standing trial for the murder of Henry Lee Turner. Stanko's ex-girlfriend, Elizabeth McClendon, is called to the stand to establish that he had the capacity to kill long before his 24-hour killing spree.
She gives her account of her relationship with Stanko and recalls to the court his attempt to kill her using ammonia and tying her up.
At that point, he leaped over onto me and turned me onto my stomach, and he held a Clorox and 409 mixture cloth over my face.
Prosecutors have the gun used to kill Turner, which Stanko had in his possession at the time of his arrest. The state also has a material witness, Henry Turner's girlfriend Cecilia, who'd been on the phone with Turner the day of the killing and can place Stanko at the scene of the crime.
On November the 19th, 2009, Stanko is found guilty of murdering Henry Lee Turner.
He ultimately receives a second death sentence.